In the 12th spot, one of the craftiest drivers in the business, Barefoot Bob McCready from up in Watertown, New York, known to run real well here in this race. And Bob, I would imagine, based on a performance that you put on yesterday, just kind of snuck up on everybody, you got to feel pretty good about this race.
Yeah, we feel real good about it, but there's 15 guys here that can win this race, and it's just going to be real tough. After about 130 laps, then we're going to really get serious and start racing. So, you know, till then, it's just going to try to get in and out of the pits and not have any problems.
Bob, I know about this. Everybody's talking about this $10,000 that is up for the 100 laps. Do you kind of let that go by and just look for that checkered flag at the end, or is there some strategy involved and kind of take that home too?
If things worked out well and looked like you had a shot at it, you go for it. But at this stage of the game, I don't think there's anybody here that's here to win this race. We'll fool around with that bonus at the middle.
All right. Well, the best of luck. We know you can do it.
Thank you, Brock.
Okay. Bob McCready, one of the real contenders here today. Paul?
Well, Brock, here's the other half of that Kenny Brightbill story. This is the #1 car. It belongs to Billy Taylor. Normally, Brightbill would be in the cockpit. Instead, a face that we're more familiar with from the sprint cars, Dave Blaney. This is a special ride for you for this race only?
Oh, yeah. I get to run a modified maybe once a year, and, you know, Billy was kind enough to give me a car to run.
What do you think of running here on the dirt in this kind of car as compared to your sprint cars?
Oh, you know, it's a lot different. It's just a different kind of race and a different kind of attitude you got to go about it. But, you know, I enjoy it, and, you know, I've been around it for a while, so it's not real strange to me.
So Dave Blaney is ready here on the starting lineup as the crowd is really getting excited. Let's go a little further back. Brock Yates once again.
Well, Paul, I'm way back here and with the 30th starter, but believe me, a man who has won here twice, one of the craftiest drivers of them all, and a terrific competitor here at Syracuse, has won this big race twice. But as I said earlier, he had horrible problems during qualifying. And Jack, 30th place isn't exactly an ideal place to start this deal.
No, it's really not. We've had problems all week, motor problems, chassis problems. But I feel pretty good right now, and it's going to be a survival kind of a thing. And hopefully we're there at the end.
You got 188 laps to kind of move up on these guys, so I would imagine you'll let the race settle down a little bit in the early going and then just kind of pick your way up, or will you make a big hard charge at the front?
Well, I'm going to let them sort themselves out and just try to pick a spot and where I feel comfortable running, and we'll just play it from there.
Okay, we'll be watching you. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Well, Brock, the news for Jack Johnson is even worse than you told him. As we check the grid sheet, he's not starting 30th. He is clear back in 38th place.
I know. There are 25 rows of cars there. You know me in double numbers. I lost count walking back here, Steve. I apologize.
Actually, 49 cars are just about ready to start the richest dirt track race of them all, the Miller Highlight 300. This could be one we'll all remember for a long, long time.
This huge crowd at the Syracuse Fairgrounds on its collective feet, awaiting the flag off of 49 of the fastest dirt modifieds in the United States. There you see Doug Hoffman, the pole sitter, Jeff Hetzler on the outside of the front row, leading off this pack of automobiles. And Steve Evans, I'll tell you what, this is without a doubt the most competitive field of race cars ever gathered here on this giant, tricky, very narrow Syracuse 1-mile dirt track.
In fact, it's been nicknamed by the drivers over the years as the Moody Mile. It has a way of changing its personality at various times during the race. And all you have to do if you're a Northeast modified fan is take a look at the grid we're showing you, because all of the track champions are here. And all of their fans have followed them from wherever they may live. And that accounts for over 30,000 people in the seats.
Right. Series of qualifying races run around the circuit called Dirt. That's drivers' independent racetracks all over the northeastern United States, now collected here. Series of qualifying races around these various half-mile dirt tracks, then some qualifying races here on the Moody Mile, finally leading to this collection of drivers. And as I said earlier, none better. Just a terrific field of cars and drivers, perfectly prepared, and most of these guys veterans of this mile racetrack.
That's right, and as cool as the temperatures are, there may be an extra pace lap here just to bring engines up to temperature. And you know, Brock, it's interesting. There are contenders spread out throughout this field, not just up front. In just about any row, you can find a driver capable of winning if they can pass successfully.
Good example, row 23, Tommy Corellis, a real veteran. But way back in row 25, the big news, Alan Johnson, the brother of Danny Johnson, a former winner here, He didn't even qualify, had terrible problems. He ended up as a promoter's option in this race. By the way, Jack Johnson, who I said was starting at 30th, actually 38th, he is not related to the other Johnson boys. Earlier, Steve had a look at one of these very exotic automobiles.
You may remember the last time we brought you dirt action from Syracuse. All of the modified cars had the silhouette of an American Motors Gremlin from the 60s. Well, that was the easiest Detroit style body to build because it was flat on the sides and flat on the roof. Well, in the 1980s, the powers that be said, wait a minute, guys, let's make these cars look more like what Detroit builds today. Come up with something. Well, they did all right. This is the 99 car of Dickie Larkin. It is a Chevrolet Lumina. You don't buy that, huh? Well, you ought to see some of the Thunderbirds that are running around here. Now, one of the problems in getting away from the Gremlin shape, it was a natural wedge, lots of downforce, and the low silhouette cars don't have that, so they lowered the interior wings, almost flattened them out, and channeled that air up to a spoiler almost straight up and down, much like a drag racing funny car. And something else they did as well, as far as managing that air, is they take some of it into the oil cooler as it passes by, and some more goes down to the rear brakes. Dickie Larkin has one of the best thought-out cars in all of dirt track racing. Now, the body rule is this: 14 inches here and 14 inches here to get the driver out of the car in case of an emergency. So this car is obviously illegal. Oop, wait a minute. Velcro side panels. I told you these guys were innovative. And look at the care they take and the pride they take in this car. They don't have to chrome those hubs, but they do. They don't have to chrome these Nerf bars, but they do. And they anodize and polish every bit of suspension possible. They even cover the shock absorbers to protect them. During competition, they put Lexan plastic here and on the other wing, and a big piece of plexiglass over here to protect the paint. So anytime there's a Best Appearing Car Award, you can bet that Dickie Larkin from Massachusetts will win it.
Well, Dickie will start 8th with that automobile. Beautiful, you say, in terms of detailing and craftsmanship. Styling, matter of personal taste, I'd say.
Well, compared to the old Gremlins, they look more like Ferraris these days. And take a look as starter Paul Luff gets the green flag ready as we get a shot out on the back straight where you can see how narrow this is, and look at the traffic jam.
About 3 cars wide. That's about all you try to get down here on this very narrow straightaway. The corners tighten up here at Syracuse. You can see very narrow bend. The front straightaway real wide as Hetzler and Hoffman lead them out down toward the green flag. We've got a green. We're racing.
And Doug Hoffman, the 125 car, the man on the pole, very alert with the throttle down at the first hit of the green flag. And it'll be Hoffman leading them into turn number 1 for the first time today.
All right, as they string out here, this is always critical, these opening laps here at Syracuse, because you've got to navigate your way through very, very narrow corners on this big mile as the field strings out down the back straightaway. And I'll tell you what, Steve, what a sight. Now we're 3 and 4 wide on this narrow course.
And miraculously, it looks like we are going to have a clean first lap, and that's rare in 300 history.
It is indeed, as both Hoffman and Hetzler lead them down into turn number 1. Here's your race for 9th place. Former winner Brett Hearn in the 6th car goes by the number 99 car of Dickie Larkin.
And there's action up front for the 2nd position, the 74 car. Jeff Holtzler, the white machine, trying to stave off 27J. Danny Johnson, and appears to have the torque out of the corners to do that.
But still, Steve, it's very difficult to pass here at Syracuse in these big, sweeping, narrow corners. About the only way you can get by anybody is at the end of these long straights where you can nose in underneath somebody as you see the car sweeping down there, Danny Johnson sweeping down into turn number 1.
And you try to stay down low, but not so low that you scrub up any speed you've accumulated. Now here's the fight for the 4th position, the 17 car, Richard Tobias, the bright blue car, and number 10, Lou Blaney, the father of Dave Blaney that we talked to in the open.
Right, and Richard Tobias, the son of the famous Dick Tobias, one of the finest sprint car drivers and modified drivers who died in a racing accident a number of years ago. And the family now building not only excellent chassis, but Richard Tobias moving up in the ranks as well among the modified drivers.
And I don't care what form of racing it is, it just gets into the family blood. Because of action like this, 12A Jack Johnson passing 11. Sammy Rogers, he has moved up 6 places. Jack Johnson now in the 32nd spot and is closing on the 555 car of Ricky Smith, the white machine.
Well, everybody watching Jack Johnson, having won this event twice, got himself a big problem in qualifying, therefore didn't start any better than 38. But there's that orange and white automobile right in the center of your screen, right in front of him. is the blue and white triple nickel car, Ricky Smith, up there in 31st spot. Johnson, of course, will have to wait as he comes down the front straightaway. Got to be patient as he weaves in front of Smith. Now, the 97 car of Steve Botcher is his next target. And again, though, Jack Johnson will have to be patient, riding around behind Botcher until he gets out onto the straightaway. Right up on Botcher's Nerf bar. Botcher gets a little sideways, and Johnson falls back ever so much. There you can see Johnson tucked right down inside that rail. Johnson, one of the real veterans in this business. He's going to get by him, I would imagine, Steve, but he'll bide his time.
Yeah, but the more you move up, the tougher the guy in front of you gets. And Johnson now has got the 97 car of Steve Botcher in front of him, the 78 machine of Rick Ware. Those have to be his next two targets.
All right, as we watch Johnson slowly working on Steve Botcher in that 97 and going a little bit to the outside. Botcher's putting up a good fight here. Right in front of him is Rick Ween in the 78 car, that white and orange automobile, and a clear track ahead. So if Jack Johnson can get by, he's got an open field for a while anyway. Back to the leaders. They're already in lap traffic, Steve.
And they're in a pair of refrigerator white automobiles. The 125 car, that's Doug Hoffman. He's leading white with blue numbers. White with red numbers, it's 74 car of Jeff Hetzler.
Hetzler right on Hoffman's bumper, or Nerf bar as it were, as they come down through that mob of traffic on the front straightaway. This is where it's going to get mighty tricky. And any little bobble, don't forget though, these cars have no ground effects whatsoever. Look at this. There is a move by Hetzler, and he will move in and take over first place in that number 74 automobile. So we got a lead change here. The 125 car, Doug Hoffman, the pole sitter, falls back into second. And in a mob of traffic, of course, it's early in the going, and he may very well have given way a little bit and just hanging in there for a while.
Well, now Doug Hoffman, the 125 car, is trying to hang on to that second position. He is getting some pressure from Danny Johnson, who's made a tremendous move here. The 27J car, and he's about to make another one. The orange 27J, Danny Johnson at turn number 1, takes over the second spot.
Danny Johnson, one of the really hot young runners in this kind of racing from Clifton Springs, New York, right behind Hetzler as they head down into turn number 3.
And there's a driver with a lot of experience that's moving up. I'm talking about C.D. Colville, the number 61 car. He started clear back in 28 and has moved up to 15. Can he keep that kind of progress up?
Well, he's got a long way to go here at Syracuse. 300 kilometers around this big mile. You are just in the opening stages of this fantastic automobile race. So a lot going on here at Syracuse.
That's right, and strategy really hasn't started to rear its ugly head, and it will before this day is over. Right now, the strategy is stay out of trouble and move forward through the pack.
And just watch out for the Moody Mile, because it's notorious for the kind of tricks it'll play.
Here in Syracuse, Jeff Hetzler, the number 74 car, commands the lead. Doug Hoffman, the early lead of the 125 car, has slipped all the way back to the 5th position. Richard Tobias Jr., the 17 car in 6th, followed by Horton in the 85 machine, car 115 with Kenny Tremont. Frank Kazi, the 44 car. Dickie Larkin wraps up the top 10 in the number 99 car. At least when I started talking about that, he was 10.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, that we've still got the leaders in position here. That's Hetzler in a 74, the 27J of Danny Johnson right behind him. Those two automobiles broken away a little bit from the field now. The racetrack just spread out with automobiles all the way around the mile. But right now, those guys have broken through the lap cars and should settle down into a pretty good race right now, Steve.
And so far, this mile hasn't shown us its many moods, because when guys like Danny Johnson can pass as many positions as they have and not crunch any sheet metal, that means you've got a good racing surface that's not throwing you offline.
Right. And these guys are very experienced. These are extremely professional drivers. Most of them make their living strictly as dirt racing drivers. D.I.R.T. Dirt Independent Racetracks. And an acronym, I guess they probably wanted to call it dirt and then figured out the words later, don't you think?
That's what I would have done.
Okay, as we watch Jeff Hetzler and Danny Johnson. Oh, trouble in turn number 1. Rick Ween, Milford, New Jersey, stuffs it into the fence, and apparently he is out for the afternoon. At least the right rear tire is cut down. That may have been the cause of the accident. Started in 27th spot, out earlier here in the going. No apparent damage to the automobile, Steve. Doesn't look like anything too serious anyway. Ween is all right, as we've got some automobiles now into the pits.
And it's way too early for that. The 48 car of D.I.R.T. He started 36 and moved all the way up to 23rd, but it looks like they're working on the left rear tire. And here comes Doug Hoffman, who had led this.
Not only that, Steve, he started on the pole. So he is in way, way too early. There is his crew. Gas cans ready. They'll top it up, but I'm sure that's not the problem. There must be trouble elsewhere in the automobile. Yes, right front tire. That is the change. These cars do not have knockoffs, so it's going to take a little time to make these tire changes. These guys normally run short track events, and like a lot of short track crews, are not too experienced in terms of the pit stop like we see in NASCAR competition.
You know, that looked like there was air in that tire. I wonder if he was more concerned maybe about the size of that tire.
Could be a stagger change, but anyway, Hoffman back out onto the racetrack, well back right now. Obviously disappointed that he was not able to just hang there with Danny Johnson.
And in the pits is the winner of the '86 race. This is Bob McCready. And we just saw Bob pointing at something, and I believe it was the right rear tire. But anyway, he's gassed and away. Now, we just saw some early pit stops there, and all of them had to do with tires in one way or another. Even though, as some of the drivers said at the top of the show, the racetrack is not going to be particularly hard on rubber because of the cool temperatures. Anyway, Paul Page is down in a sea of tires to tell us about them.
Racing on the dirt here at Syracuse, there are 3 different tire companies represented. McCreary, the Hoosier Tire, and of course the Goodyear Racing Eagle. Now, tires are absolutely critical here. They've come with several different compounds, but most of the racers have decided to use a nice hard compound, and that's because they've put some cinders into the track over the winter. The track's also used for horse racing, and because of that, it is now very, very abrasive. In fact, tire wear could be a key factor throughout the entire run today. Now, additionally, these cars run with stagger. That is to say that they'll make the circumference of the right rear tire maybe as much as 5 inches larger than the left rear. They do the same thing up on the front of the car, only the stagger difference there is only about 2 1/4 inches. Tires are so important here, as a matter of fact, that many of the teams that may be on Goodyear have also brought a little bit of everybody else's tire just in case.
Well, here comes Doug Hoffman back in again, Steve, and they're going to work on the left rear tire this time. And I'll tell you what, an added complication. Everybody looking at the sky, it's starting to spit just a little bit of rain.
That's right, and that could change everybody's choice of tires. As Paul just explained, they may have some in the back they hadn't even considered, depending on the weather.
Well, you'll notice that these tires are treaded tires, even though this racetrack in the later stages, especially if it warms up, which it probably won't today, but sometimes this racetrack can almost become like asphalt. It gets almost black in the groove, and there you get to a point where you need a really almost an asphalt tire.
Now, this is the crew of Doug Hoffman's machine, the 125 car, who led and then fell back and finally had to come into the pits. Check it out, those tires. They've usually got a man on the crew that does nothing but inventory the tires and keep track of where they are and what they've still got left.
All right, there's your starter. The pace car still on the racetrack. He is signaling to that white flag. That means 1 lap to green. So the next time around here, as this giant field strings out, let's take a look one more time at the leaderboard. Jeff Hetzler leading it. Danny Johnson, Rich Urich started up near the front. Brett Hearn, always a contender, started 9th. He's now sitting at 4th. Kenny Tremont moved up a little bit into the 6th spot. Bright Bill, one of the real strong runners, in 8th now. Jimmy Horton falling back a little bit. So the field up front, shifting, moving back and forth all the time. But as we said earlier, still relatively early in the going as the pace car drops down onto the apron. Now, field all alone. Horton, Danny Johnson in the front row. They'll bring him down around. That is turn number 3, you see, coming off that narrow back straightaway. They'll start to get on the throttle just about now as they exit turn number 4. Green flag out. We're racing again.
Watch the 27J car, the orange machine. That's Danny Johnson. Can he get that lead away from Jeff Hetzler in the 74 car? Johnson giving it everything he's got. He may be a little too high.
Well, the restart here is a little bit different, Steve. The slow cars, lap cars, are on the inside in single file. Fast cars, single file on the outside. So Hetzler was able to move out and pull about a 5 or 6 car-length lead down into turn number 3 over Danny Johnson.
And one driver out there, the blue number 10 car, that's Rich Urich. He's been so smooth and dependable. He's almost invisible, and he's running in the 3rd position, came from 5th.
Right, so he benefited a little bit by Doug Hoffman falling back with that tire problem. So, and speaking of Hoffman, he is sitting in the mob scene as they come down the front straightaway. He is well back there. There he goes, up high, that 125, that white number 125. That, of course, is Doug Hoffman, your pole sitter. And I don't think that car is working, Steve. He sure didn't want it out there against the fence.
No, I think that car is driving him instead of the other way around. The race for the 5th spot, the 115 car of Kenny Tremont, the 17 machine of Richard Tobias. That is the fight for the 5th position. Tremont is in it right now.
There's the blue car of Richard Tobias, one of a racing family out of Pennsylvania, and he is probably, like most of the guys right now, Steve, just sitting there. Tremont sitting in the 5th spot. They're going to wait for this first flurry of pit stops, and of course, if we get a caution, we're going to see a bunch of guys dash into the pits for tire changes and fuel. But tactics, I think, are going to probably stabilize for the time being until we get to that first round of stops.
Well, I'm sure there's some drivers out there right now that would love to pit at this point, maybe a little bit early, but they're afraid to do it under the green, and I don't blame them, because as sure as they'd come in, there'd be a yellow flag, and they'd get stuck.
So the racing continues at Syracuse, New York, the Miller 300.
Syracuse in the Miller Highline 300. The action is up front. Number 74, the white car with the red numbers, being challenged for the lead. Jeff Hetzler in the lead on the inside is Danny Johnson, 27J. Johnson has worked his way through this pack in the Miller Highline 300 from 18th to 2nd and challenging for number 1, Brock Yates.
What a drive, and now Johnson down low, down the front straightaway. He is going to take the lead. Yes, the 27J, Danny Johnson, bobbles just a little bit as he backs it down into turn number 1. But look at this. Here comes the 6 car, Brett Hearn, one of the real contenders in this event, in for what is obviously an unscheduled stop.
He has a flat right rear tire, but it comes at a point in the race, Brock, where it's not disastrous for him. At least we're deep enough where it maybe could have been a planned stop for some teams.
Yeah, but even then, though, Steve, I'm sure that the crew was waiting for a yellow when everybody could get in all at once, and this is not a good thing. And now Paul Page is down with Joe Knopf, Jeff Hetzler's crew chief, to find out his problem.
Well, he's been the dominant power in the early part, but now we hear he's got a steering problem.
Yeah, it looks like we lost the power steering, so we're going to have to pop the hood and take a look at it. So I don't know what else. We'll just have to hang in there and see what happens.
It's just something you hope for and hope you might be able to repair then.
Well, hopefully maybe the belt popped off and it's still there, and maybe we can slip it back on. We're running to get another belt right now. But if we don't do it, he's just going to have to be a muscle man and see if we can hang in there.
Okay, there's a report. Good luck to you.
Well, here's some good news for that man, Joe Knopf, and anybody else that wants to pit. Bring them on in, because here is a caution flag that has been brought out by 42P Pat Ward, who had a flat down in turn number 4. It's going to get real busy on pit road, Brock.
Tough break for Brett Hearn. He gets underway just as everybody else comes in. Remember, his stop came under green. Here come the leaders. Danny Johnson, 27J, charging into his pit. Right behind him, Jeff Hetzler. And now let's go down to Paul Page, who's in Danny Johnson's pit area.
And here with the yellow flag, both the 74 car of Holtzler and the leader, Danny Johnson, comes in for a stop. Holtzler way out of position, as his crew really had to go out about 15 feet away from the wall to be able to get to work on his car. It's a battle in the pits right now. Johnson, the leader, just behind this car of Holtzler, and you can see they're going to go to work on Holtzler's car, trying to find out what's wrong with that power steering. But with the fuel can still attached and the hood off, they send him back into the action, trying to beat the field around. So Holtzler goes back out.
And apparently, Jeff has gone back out without the necessary power steering repairs. If you've ever had your street car's engine die and tried to steer a car with power steering, you have some idea what he's up against.
All right, this is Bob McCready back into pits for the 2nd time today. They're going to make a change of the right rear tire, probably make some chassis adjustments. Oh, they're changing both rear tires. So McCready, one of the real favorites, is falling back even farther. That's the 61 car of C.D. Colville. Colville. Remember, he's had a good run so far today. This looks like a routine stop for him. No problems apparent on that automobile. So pit stops continue here, and here comes a 74 car of Hetzler again. Paul is there.
And here is Jeff Holtzler back into the pits. He's pounding on the top of his dash. Very concerned about the machine. They continue to go to work on the rear, and he gestures trying to get the crew over as they take a look now just under the console to try and find out what the problem continues to be with the power steering.
And Hetzler is frustrated not being able to communicate with his crewmen. They're not using radios on most of these teams, and he's just going to take it back out on the racetrack. Now, the second stop for Bob McCready is a disastrous one. He is still in the pit area, and they are still apparently trying to get this car to suit the driver. They're doing some rear suspension work, trying to get the car loaded or weighted properly. In fact, to find out exactly what's going on, let's go to Brock Yates, who was with the crew chief on that team, Mike Haslett.
What's the problem?
Bob says the car feels like something's broken in the back end, letting the back end shift forward and backwards. He thinks we're in trouble.
Didn't find anything, though.
With a quick look, we didn't find anything, but he says we're in trouble.
You're probably going to find it back in again, I would imagine.
Yes, we are, yes.
A little question of that. If there's something seriously broken in the rear end of that automobile, McCready is not about to endanger himself and anybody else out on that racetrack. Yep, indeed. We'd look for him back into the pit.
Very experienced driver, and if he says something's wrong, you can be sure there is. Ray Bateman now leading into the 0 car. Lou Blaney, both these guys did not stop, so there's a little bit of a distortion as far as the leaders are concerned. Here's Hoffman, Denny Johnson, Jimmy Horton. Johnson up in the 8th spot after a very quick pit stop, as did Doug Hoffman. So those are basically men that are contenders, even though they made a stop, but up front the guys didn't. So Hoffman and Denny Johnson still very much in contention here. In fact, in reality, they are the leaders because everybody in front of them has yet to make their first pit stop.
All right, they're coming out of turn 3 into 4, out of 4, and they get a green flag. The 0 car, Ray Bateman Jr. leads him down the front straightaway, and we have got trouble.
Oh, right away. As the field sweeps off turn number 4, a big jam up coming out onto the front straightaway. That is Tommy Corellis's number 57 up against the outside of the fence. The 38 car of Mike Perotti appeared to start it, but Jack Johnson's in it, C.D. Colville, Kenny Tremont, some of the front runners, or at least contenders, all jammed up against the outer fence as they came off turn number 4 on that restart, Steve.
And this is the kind of chain reaction crash that a lot of people, including yours truly, expected to see on the very first lap of this race, and instead all 49 cars ran it clean. Stay with us. We'll be back to further analyze this shunt here in Syracuse.
Here's one of the victims of that big crash down there in turn number 4 on the restart. Mike Perotti in the 38 automobile. You can see the substantially altered bodywork on the right side of the car. The hood disappeared in that as Mike very tentatively gets back underway. He's probably going to try to carry on, but that's a severely damaged race car. Although, Steve Evans, not quite as damaged as some of the other victims.
No, indeed. Let's slow down the video and have a look. Watch for the 4 car, Nat Quinn, in the background. Now there, you can see he got up and tagged the 38 white car of Mike Perotti, who spins and then gets into the wall, while the 4 car continues to become involved with more machines. The 61 car of C.D. Colville, 12A car of Jack Johnson, the 115 car of Kenny Tremont, 57 car of Tommy Corellis, the 20 car of Bruce Sire. Boy, it was a train wreck. Let's go to Paul Page, who's with the 115 car of Kenny Tremont. Paul?
Well, here, back behind the pit line, they're working on Kenny Tremont's car. He still sits in the car. Kenny, are you hoping to get back in?
Oh, yeah, definitely. We're going to try and do the best.
What happened to you on the crash there? It looks like they were lined up badly.
They were it happened far in front of me. You know, the cars got mixed up and we had no place to go.
All right, well, he's covered with dust and dirt. The side of his car is completely battered in, but the crew works on Kenny Tremont's machine with the hopes of getting him back into the fight.
Now let's go to Brock Yates with a Jack Johnson car, who had gotten up to 13th.
Well, Steve, apparently Jack Johnson's crew thinks they can get him back into the race. They're working on the front end after that car took a stuffing up against the fence. Let me see if I can get a word with Jack. Jack, you reckon you can get this thing back in the race?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what the damage is up there. We're chasing a point, so we're going to try to get back out there.
Jack, you got just pinched up against the fence, I would imagine, on that restart.
Yeah, I got pinched there. The cars were all sliding around. I tried to get through outside against the wall, and somebody just tapped me, and I clipped the wall of my right front. I couldn't get through.
We were watching you. You seem to be moving up pretty good.
I was just trying to run steady. I wasn't running as hard as I could. It was raining. It was a little dangerous out there. I was just trying to hold my own.
Well, great job. I'm sorry this happened to you. We'll be watching. The best of luck.
Thank you.
Jack Johnson apparently going to try to have a go at it.
And that's good news for the many Johnson fans here at Syracuse. You know, that kind of a crash is not unusual in modified racing on a restart or the start of the race even. But I think the rain, as Jack said, contributed heavily to this one. So many cars involved. No one could steer through this mess.
Well, there you see the 115 of Tremont heading down toward the inside fence, while Jack Johnson's car goes south toward the outside fence. And that little cluster of automobiles, everybody pretty well beat up in it. The rest of the field kind of feeding their way through. So fortunately, we've seen some even bigger ones in restarts like this, Steve. But right now, Ray Bateman continues to hold on to it. But notice Danny Johnson now starting to move a little bit in the 27J. He has already made his pit stop and is now apparently ready to move back into the lead.
Well, whatever may happen, the driver of the Zero car, Ray Bateman Jr., can always tell his friends and family that he led the richest dirt race of them all, the Miller High Life 300 in Syracuse. All right, Brock, they're picking up speed and headed for a restart.
There you see the pace car down on the apron off the racetrack as Bateman brings him down through turn number 3, heading out through turn 4 out of the main straight. Let's see if everybody can get through it this time.
Well, I tell you, the fans are on their feet with their fingers crossed. They don't need a crash. They need good, solid racing right now, and that's what they're going to get.
The 44 car of Frank Causey moves into the lead on that restart. Just drove right by Ray Bateman Jr. in the number 0. He is starting to fall back, but look at Causey in that yellow automobile has broken free from the field, showing some real strength there.
And you know, we're getting close to lap 100. The leader picks up a bonus of $10,000.
Look at Causey, but right behind him, that 27J car of Danny Johnson has broken free of the pack as well. So we're going to see a race for the big bucks here at the 100th lap.
You know, and that's interesting. That explains why Causey and Bateman coming to the pits right now, didn't pit on that last yellow. They were thinking about that 10 grand, not winning the overall event.
Absolutely right. But right now, a tough break for Bateman. He is in to make a tire change on the left rear, probably the right rear as well. So the gamble did not pay off for Ray Bateman, unfortunately.
No, he was out of rubber. As soon as he stood on that thing and applied any kind of power to it, it was uncontrollable. But he took the gamble that Causey took. It backfired on Bateman, but Causey is out there. Maybe he's going to be $10,000 richer here in a minute if his tires will stand up.
Well, there goes Bateman back underway, but his hopes for that big 10 grand payoff have disappeared when his tires went away. Not this man, no. The 99th lap. Causey, the 44 car. Danny Johnson, the 27J, knows exactly what this deal is. Here it is. Causey and Johnson will now enter the 100th lap. One of those two cars will probably lead it, and the guy leading the 100th lap is the big winner, the payoff, $10,000. Here comes Causey under the wire, right behind him Johnson. 1 mile to go for $10,000. Lap car in front of Causey. A little technical question here. Johnson really good in this kind of traffic. Causey, Johnson right on his left rear wheel. Causey gets by him down into turn number 3, that long back straightaway. Danny Johnson, Causey in his sights. Both cars tucked down inside that inside rail as they come off turn number 4. Causey's got good power, Steve. He's going to lead it down here. A 10 grand payoff for the man from Wind Gap, Pennsylvania.
There was a moment there when Danny Johnson got inside him. I thought Causey had let it slip away. But no, he fought tenaciously to hang on. Paul is in his pits with his crew chief, Gary Kleintop, for congratulations all around.
Well, the 100 laps and the $10,000 kind of came and went. You guys are still studying the race. It looks like you're out for a win overall.
Well, we got to still make one more stop for gas and tires. It's going to be cutting it close. We need a caution soon.
Got to feel good about the 10 grand, though.
Yeah, we needed that.
That'll help out.
Yeah, that'll help the tire bill.
Well, I know you want to get back and watch the car. Good luck with the whole thing.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Well, suddenly the hopes of this crew out of Pennsylvania just soar as the 44 automobile of Frank Kazi takes home the first payday in a long race that lies ahead here at the Miller 300 from Syracuse.
New York State Fairgrounds in Syracuse, New York at the Miller Highlight 300 for modified cars. This time it was the 8 car of Mike Ritchie, who was dropping oil, was black flagged in. They want to take a good look at the racetrack. Lou Blaney in the 10 car has taken this opportunity to bring his machine into the pits. Brock is with a man who is out of the race, a man who led it.
I'm with Jeff Hetzler, and Jeff, it's got to be a very disappointing moment for you. You ran so well. Seemed to have a really good position in as far as just staying with the leaders. What happened to the car?
Well, we lost the power steering while I was leading, and maintained the lead for a while. I dropped back to second when Danny Johnson passed me, but we lost the steering. It's internal. We pulled in the pit. We thought we could throw another belt on it if that's what it was, but it wasn't. It's something internal, so we just had to ride it out as long as we could until I got rubber-armed enough to drop out.
The race car these cars are heavy. They're 2,500-pound race cars, and they must be a real horse without power steering in them.
Yeah, I got a hard time right now even moving. So, you know, it's a lot of weight. It's a lot of race car to handle when you lose your power steering.
Okay, Jeff Hetzler finished after his power steering just went away on him, Steve, and he just ran out of arm power, as he said.
And the front end geometry is set up for power steering. It just won't work without it, as a very strong young man found out, Jeff Hetzler. All right, the field is under caution after a flurry of pit stops while we were away. Billy Pouch now the leader. Kazi is in second. C.D. Colville, the 61 car, in third, followed by Johnson and Wilson. That's the top 5 here at Syracuse. Now take a look at this. Alan Johnson started dead last, 49th in the 14J car. Well, he's up to 7th. And Dave Blaney in the number 1 car, the sprint car star, has come from 22nd to 9th in this modified contest.
All right, your leader, Billy Pouch, the New Jersey star, has had kind of middling luck in this race, one of the top drivers in dirt. But a man that has never really been able to get this kind of oft-sought victory here. This, of course, is the crown jewel in the dirt schedule, and if you can win this one, not only is it a giant payday, but it's a big prestige factor, too.
That's right. You're part of history. Billy Pouch's 76 car takes the green flag and leads him down. Behind him is the 44 car, Frank Kazi, the latest 10,000-aire in motor racing.
He's got his money, but he's looking after that almost $100,000 awaiting the winner. So it could be a great day for Frank Kazi as he tucks right in behind Billy Pouch. I'll tell you what, that 44 car is really working right now, Steve.
Oh, absolutely. And at this point of the race, you get physical if you have to. If you got a nervous guy to get through, well, desperate race drivers do desperate things.
Oh, look at this. Frank Kazi right on the nerf bar of Billy Pouch, drafting him as they head down into turn number 1. Falls back just a skosh as Pouch sideways right into turn 1. You really have to pitch it into turn 1 and then kind of tuck it down on the inside rail. Here they come down that back straightaway. Very, very narrow. Now watch Pouch and Kazi both tuck right in against that inside rail. That's the fast line through turn number 3 as they sweep wide. And now, of course, that big front straightaway is about 3 blocks wide. Here, you can really move around on that one.
And there's so much rubber down there, and the track's gotten so hard, you can actually hear it, hear the tires squeal as they come into the turns under braking.
We got some potholes appearing in turns 1 and 2 as well. That could be trouble near the end of the race. Pouch has now moved out to maybe 3 car lengths as they head down one more lap into turn number 3. And Kazi, though, still hanging on, tenacious. Frank Kazi, he is up now. Boy, he's adrenaline's flowing after that payday on the 100th lap.
And on the straightaways, he kind of gets down near the rail, hoping that maybe the leader will slide high. And look who's out of the race, another former leader. Doug Hoffman crawls out of the 125 car. Paul Page is there.
Doug Hoffman climbs out of the car. Boy, Doug, you've been fighting with that thing. You looked good at first, and then it just seemed to go bad for you.
Well, the car felt real good. You know, we got in lap traffic early in the race, and rain was hurting me a little bit. We got past there, but things were going real good yet. It still felt real competitive. The transmission started popping out of gear, and I tried to hold it in. You just can't drive with one hand up here.
The But once it does that, you just naturally got to retire. How was the track out there with the on-again, off-again rain?
Well, it's starting to get better now that the rain stopped. It was starting to get fast. I just changed right rear tires, and the car felt real good. Now it started popping out of gear. It just wasn't our day.
Well, we're sorry to see you out so early. Doug Hoffman, out, done for the day.
Clearly disappointed. The man who started on the pole here, a great opportunity to win his first Miller High Life 300, but of course that non-cooperative gearbox that put him into the pits for the afternoon. And still the race goes on. Billy Pouch in that white 76 pokes his nose into some slower traffic with Frank Cozzi right on his dirt bar. Well, let's see how Pouch handles. There's 3 or 4 slower cars up ahead of him. And right behind him, though, is Frank Cozzi. Boy, I'll tell you what, Cozzi just hasn't given an inch ever since this restart.
No, he hasn't, but he may have some fresh company to play with here. 27J, Danny Johnson, right there, takes 3rd place away from C.D. Colville in the 61 car. Johnson on the prowl. Whoa!
Pouch gets wide into turn number 1. Pouch in the 76 car way up on the high side here, and everybody blows past him. There is Cozzi. He gets by him. Danny Johnson in the 27J gets by him, or almost by him. Pouch recovers a little bit. Yep, Johnson by him as well. So a lead change here right away with a bobble by Billy Pouch in turn number 1.
And that blue car just ahead of Danny Johnson. Well, you'll remember Rich Erwick in the 10 car that was having such great success. He is now a lap down. That's how quick your fortunes can change on the Moody Mile.
And very much in the mind of Frank Cozzi is upset. He started 15th. Right behind him, the man who started in 3rd, Danny Johnson. His sights are on the lead. We'll be right back at Syracuse on the Moody Mile. Stay with us.
Back in Syracuse, New York, I'm Steve Evans along with Paul Page and Brock Yates, and we are thoroughly enjoying the Miller High Life 300 for dirt modified cars. I don't know how anybody could like this kind of competition. Look at the yellow and blue car moving around a bit. That's the leader, 44, Frank Cozzi, 27J, Danny Johnson dogging him.
He is. Danny Johnson, I think, a little bit surprised at the power that Frank is showing here. He started it way back in 15. Oh, Billy Pouch, the 76 car. He was a leader for a while. Remember, then he bobbled in turn number 1, got way up high, letting Cozzi by. Now he is in the pits.
Well, that bobble on the part of Pouch might have been tires or suspension or something that we couldn't see, and I'm sure that's the reason that he is in the pits.
Right. As the car now gets underway, taking the gas can, that 11-gallon NASCAR-style gas can hanging out of that quick fill on the left rear of the car. Now one of the dirt crewmen yanks it loose, and Billy Pouch gets underway, but loses some more precious seconds. Remember, too, Steve, that he stopped under green, and that's always a disaster.
And look how hot the tires are on Bob McCready's car. They're still struggling with a broken rear end mount. It's allowing that entire differential, axle, wheels, and tires to move around, which creates more friction and tires you can fry eggs on.
So Bob McCready clearly out of contention here as we watch the leader, Frank Cozzi, the yellow 44, dogged by Danny Johnson in the 27J, moving around slower traffic. They're in the midst of it now. Lap traffic, a mob of it up ahead of Frank Cozzi, now up on the outside, way on the outer rail as they get down into turn number 3. So he's going to work his way through. Let's see if Johnson is a master in short track competition, really good in this kind of cut and shoot competition. Johnson did not make up any clear advantage on Cozzi.
Well, Danny Johnson, extremely popular with the fans for his aggressive but clean driving style. Paul's in his pits with his crew chief, Billy Colton.
Well, we've got one whale of a fight going here. Do you think Danny can catch him?
I think so. We can't let it all hang out right in the second. We got to try to conserve our fuel a little bit. We're really playing it tight on the fuel mileage here.
Has he been talking to you at all?
Yes. Car feels real good. We're just trying to nurse it as far as we can. Trying to draft them when we can draft them on the straightaways and go from there.
Well, we're into the closing laps, and it looks like one tight race.
And one smart team using two-way communications to try to anticipate their problems and their fuel economy. Uh-oh, Billy Pouch, a former leader of the 76 car, is out of this event. It's almost a jinx to lead here at Syracuse. Let's go to Brock with another man out of the race.
Bob McCready getting out of the race car and obviously disappointed. Bob, apparently rear end problem just put it all away for you, huh?
I think we broke a brake line or wore the pads out.
Is that what it was? You came in earlier, real early in the race, and told the crew that something was weird in the rear end. Do you think this had anything to do with it?
Possibly, I don't know. We had a vibration after about 20 or 30 laps. I don't know if the spur gears or the rear end gears, something, and it vibrated. It was still hanging in there, but didn't feel real good out there.
A great show as usual. Sorry you're out.
Thank you.
And some great racing continues. The 61 car with the day glow numbers on it, that's C.D. Colville. He's in third. Here comes 14J Alan Johnson. Remember, he started 49th, dead last. Well, he's closing in, and right now may even take third position. He has taken the third position. The lap car they're dealing with there is 42P. That's Pat Ward. He's trying to stay out of the way, but it's tough to do.
Well, we got a real mob scene now with the two Johnson brothers now contending for second spot and chasing Frank Cozzi, who still holds on to the lead. The big surprise so far in this race has been Frank Cozzi with that yellow number 44 automobile holding off these two very strong drivers from the dirt circuit from upstate New York. Alan, the older of the two brothers, won this race in 1983, had some terrific seasons in the earlier part of the decade, and then the last couple of years, though, younger brother Danny has really had the better of it. He's had some fine seasons with that number 27 automobile, and his crew now highly optimistic that they can run down the 44 of Frank Cozzi in the closing stages of this race. Now, as I mentioned, there is almost $100,000, very close to it, at stake here. In addition to that, a whole bunch of manufacturers' prizes. Steve is in the garage area with one of the special. No question, the folks loving it. They're watching these guys go at it, hammer and tongs all the way around this big mile racetrack. And there are your two leaders. Frank Cozzi still being stalked by Danny Johnson in the 27J. Is he hanging back? Is he waiting for a few final laps to make his move? Or is Frank Cozzi simply able to hold him off? And what about brother Alan Johnson back there in third, all the way up from 49th place?
You know, Danny this morning before the race started was feeling bad for his older sibling starting way in the back. He isn't feeling bad for him now. He wished it'd go away.
Yeah, right in his rear view mirror is Alan Johnson in a 14J, the 49th and last, the scratch starter in this field. And he is moving. The car is hooked up. Johnson, a real veteran, knows his way around this racetrack, and he is definitely going to be a factor in the closing laps.
This is the kind of charge from last to third that only a real veteran could do here at Syracuse. That's just the fact of the matter. You've really got to know this mile.
Right. That's exactly what Jack Johnson had hoped to do, and of course he got tangled up on that restart, which put him out. And Johnson, of course, made his way through there, and it may have been that he was far enough back so that he was able to avoid that trouble when Jack got into trouble. But right now, it's Danny Johnson challenging for the lead here at Syracuse.
Continues here at Syracuse between the leader Frank Cozzi in the 44 car and Danny Johnson in 27J. That is Billy Colton Johnson's crewman, and he looks worried. Fuel is their big concern right now. But Brock Yates, I noticed the cars are starting to get twitchier.
Well, they are. The racetrack is starting to break up, as it often does. We're getting some big potholes in the entrance of the corners here as we watch Cozzi, Johnson, Blaney, and Colville in the top five. They are the only ones on the lead lap. These next five guys are one lap down and essentially out of contention unless we have some real surprises in the closing stages. So there is Cozzi. Right behind him, the orange 27J, Danny Johnson, and right behind him, brother Allen. Just hanging back there, kind of like lurking about 3 car lengths back.
We're working lap 171 out of 188, or 300 kilometers. And there's no strategy now, Brock Yates. It's just get this job done. Get around the lap traffic like you just saw Danny Johnson did as quickly as possible. If they hold you up, the leader, Cozzi, is going to get away from him.
Right. And Cozzi is showing all kinds of strength here on these straightaways. And I think Danny Johnson, obviously, we don't know whether his tires are going away from him a little bit, whether he's concerned about fuel. Who's to know? You know, these race cars have been hammered for almost 180 miles around a very rough old racetrack, and you can never tell what's going away on them. Shock absorbers, suspension settings. The race cars maybe oversteering, understeering, all kinds of weird stuff that these drivers are fighting right now. And it's now strictly a mano-a-mano battle between basically Danny Johnson and Frank Cozzi, with Alan Johnson just sitting back there hoping, I think, something's going to happen, because he doesn't seem to be able to move in on it.
Well, here's Danny Johnson trying to move in the red 27 car, but Cozzi, as you said, just hangs on. And you know, I love all the variables. They're worried about fuel and tires. The racetrack is running. Who says it was supposed to be easy? This is automobile racing.
That's right. If it wasn't, as Joel Jack Hewitt once said, everybody up in the grandstands would be down here doing it with us.
That's right. And there is Johnson's crew still looking on. Nobody talking, nobody joking, nobody doing anything but just hoping there's enough fuel in his gas tank to finish this race.
Right. Down the back straightaway. Cozzi resisting the pressure of a very aggressive and very talented young man right behind him, and not wavering a bit. Notice Cozzi just tucks in right in close on that inside rail. Johnson seems to run a little bit wider, but coming off that fourth corner, he seems to be able to pull Danny Johnson down the front straight by about 3 or 4 car lengths.
All right, there are 15 laps to go in the richest dirt track race of them all, the Miller High Life 300. Cozzi out in front, Danny Johnson in that second spot. And you're right, Brock, in the turns, he can get up and almost give him a tap, but right there in the straightaways, he loses a car length or 2. And in third spot, Alan Johnson. Is what they say, the catbird seat? Is that what he's in?
I don't know what it is, but I'll tell you, he's got his eyes on his brother, and Alan Johnson has begun to move in a little bit. The fans sensing a charge to the finish here. Stand up as each time these Breesum goes by that wide front straightaway. Look at Alan Johnson now. Alan Johnson has moved into about 2 car lengths behind his brother. So the pressure begins to mount. This young man, Sean Parker, one of Danny Johnson's crewmen, a sophomore in high school, travels with Johnson during the summer months. Boy, is he feeling the pressure as he just watches his teammate try to move in on Frank Cozzi, who has commanded this race for lap after lap, Steve.
Well, you know, and this kind of payday can make a real difference in a team's future, the kind of equipment they can afford. Maybe move into another series. These are the races you dream about winning, not just for prestige, but for a whole lot of money. Alan Johnson, the 14J car in third, had a piece of bodywork fly up there, Brock.
Yeah, he did. In fact, you can see it flap as he comes down into turn number 3, and he gets wide in that corner. Oh, lifts an inside left front wheel. That car is really getting cranky for Alan Johnson. Now, he, in fact, you can see the aerodynamics that have been affected on that right side of that automobile. So Johnson apparently encountering a really bad luck here now.
All right, Johnson in third. All eyes, though, on the leaders. The 27 car of Danny Johnson in second. Still applying all the pressure he can on Cozzi. Cozzi in the 24 car. First name Frank. Look at this. Johnson again in the turns. Right up on his back, but can't quite get around it. Boy, these cars are getting evil.
They are. Well, you've got almost 6 figures awaiting you in victory lane here. I'll tell you what, there are 3 very serious race drivers at work right now. One little bobble, one just slight miscue, and you've got trouble. Look at Johnson, it's up alongside Cozzi. They spin and they crash in turn number 2.
This is unbelievable. First and second place have collided. The crew of Danny Johnson can't believe what they're hearing on the radio. There is Cozzi, the 44 car. Danny Johnson, the 27 car. And what does this mean? It means the man who started dead last, the brother of Danny Johnson, is leading the Miller High Life 300. The crews are just done.
Unbelievable. Johnson tried to make his move. There's his crew chief, Billy Colton, understands the impact of what happened here. There is Cozzi. Apparently tried to get it started, back underway. Now Johnson tries to move, but they are out for sure. Here is what happened. Notice Johnson down low, coming off turn number 2, tucks his right front wheel inside the left rear of Frank Cozzi, and they both come loose. Cozzi in the yellow 44 tries to save it. Johnson just heads directly for the outside fence and crashes. Cozzi takes a big 360-degree spin and stalls.
And the field, of course, is under caution. If there's a parallel to other forms of motorsports, this would be a Dale Earnhardt, Rusty Wallace incident in NASCAR racing, where one of the two tried to pass down low and the other one just didn't open the lineup any wider than it was. I don't think either driver could be considered at fault here. They may not agree with that analysis. In fact, let's go to Paul Page, who is in the Johnson pits, with crew chief Billy Colton.
Had a great fight going, tangled out at 2. What are you hearing?
All I know is we're all done. I have no idea beyond that.
What a terrible disappointment, huh?
Yeah, it is. We thought we had a real good shot at it, you know?
All right. One of the Johnson family out. Another still in the fight.
All right, Billy Colton clearly disappointed, even shocked at this development in these late stages. There is your current leader. Alan Johnson started last, now leading the Miller High Life 300 here at Syracuse with only a few laps remaining.
He came from dead last. How about Dave Blaney and Lou Blaney, father and son, in the top 5? Blaney and C.D. Colville, maybe even Randy Glenski, still have a chance at winning this. But in one lap, it's Dave Blaney who has the best chance. And right now, Call is with his crew chief.
Billy, it's going to be a one-lap run. What do you think?
Well, I just told him to get the tires hot, and we're going to have to swirl them back and forth and get the tires hot, and it's going to be a shootout. That's what we're going to do. We're going for it.
If anybody can do it, Dave can.
Yes, he can. He's done a tremendous job. He's a dynamite kid.
All right, good luck to you. Dave Blaney from 22nd now in second, and maybe looking at a win.
And Billy Taylor is car owner cheering him on as we've got the cars almost at a dead stop on the back straightaway. There's the pace car now moving out to begin to up the speed here. There's Alan Johnson in the 14J. He's got to be just so happy. Can't scratching his head. Had some real breaks, but drove brilliant, needless to say. Dave Blaney sitting back there in second. We've seen him run so well in the World of Outlaws over the years. There is the green flag on its way out. Dave Blaney trying to move in on Alan Johnson. Johnson gets a great start. A 10, 12 car length lead down into turn number 1, Steve.
That is called putting them away on the start, Brock. Unless the wheels fall off of that 14J car, nobody is going to stop that man-possessed Alan Johnson. For generations, they'll remember that he came from the back to win on the Moody Mile in Syracuse. Johnson into turn number 3. Out of turn number 4. Half the distance of the front straightaway separates him from victory. The checkered flag is out. Alan Johnson has done the impossible. He has come from last position to win the Miller High Life 300. We'll talk to Alan in a moment. Option, Alan Johnson better get ready for a crush of fans when they're allowed to cross that racetrack to the winner's circle where he is now. Dave Blaney finished second, Colville third, Glenski fourth. In fact, the top 7 were all still on the lead lap. Right now, let's go to Brock Yates with the winner.
All right, Alan Johnson out of the car. Fans are loving it. What a show. All right. One happy young man here, I'll tell you what. As soon as he gets his helmet off here. All right, here we go. Yeah. What a show. Alan, give me the odds. Give me the odds this morning when you woke up as to where if you'd be here right now. Be honest with me.
I didn't even think I was going to be in the race.
I know, you weren't even. And when did you think you had a shot at it? I mean, halfway, were you moving up a little bit so you felt good about it?
Well, the car felt good ever since we got here. We always had bad qualifying. You know, we had to time early and we had trouble with it popping out of gear.
You had to feel a little bit of remorse for the old brother there when he hit the fence. What happened? What went through your mind then?
Well, he was driving a little hard. You know, he was real hungry for the win. I was underneath him there going into 1, and he put me right down in a guardrail, and I was just trying to keep my nose clean.
Great show. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And now let's go to Paul with a second-place finisher.
Well, Brock, here's Dave Blaney. Started 22nd, moved up to second place. For a bit there, it looked like he had a real shot at the lead in this thing, completely covered in Syracuse dirt. Boy, what a great fight at the end.
Well, I just can't thank Billy Taylor and his crew enough.
you know, they got me a perfect race car today. I could drive anywhere I wanted to go, and you know, our pit strategy was real good. You know, they kept just, we didn't have to pass many. We passed them, you know, when they pulled in the pits, but you know, I don't know. I just tried as hard as we could. We kind of got low on tire there at the end, and I just couldn't, just hanging on for second.
Well, last couple of laps, they were also saying that Johnson's left front was going flat. Could you tell it? Could you see a change?
Yeah, it was flat, but it wasn't hurting him real bad. Just getting in the corner a little bit, he was a little slow, but you know, he was still pretty good though.
All right, thank you, Paul. Let's go to Brock with the young man, Danny Johnson, who was within 1 lap of winning this race.
I'll tell you what, it was a great drive. I know you're disappointed, but you did what you had to do, and you just got pinched in the corner, I would imagine. That just put you up in the fence.
Yeah. He getting towards the end of the race there, and he drifted up a little bit. I tried to get underneath him. He come back down. We touched, and that's all it took.
Well, it's automobile racing. I know you're disappointed, but the race car seemed to be well hooked up, and I would imagine you were just sitting back there trying to get by him. You reckon we figured you could get by him when you had to.
Yeah, we're trying, but just an unfortunate incident.
Yeah. Well, we're sorry you're out. It was a great show anyway.
Okay, thanks.
All right, let's go to Paul for the other side of that story.
Frank, you got to be nursing what is a terrible disappointment. Fighting for the front there. What happened?
Well, Danny must have just got a little anxious there, and you know, it just bumped me a little bit. It doesn't take much over there to get turned around, and once it starts to go, he can't hardly ever bring the car back there. It's the way it goes, I guess.
You wait all season to run an event like this. It's a very important one. What's the duty inside?
Well, I wait all my life because I've been coming here since so many years, and I got close, and I just kept thinking every lap, this is it, you know. I just kept straight and kept thinking, man, this is going to be the one, you know. And just like that, you just take it away. So, well, not so bad, you know. The car didn't get crashed bad, and there's always next week, but you know, I give up a couple next weeks for this week.
Well, close this time, but it's a face that you're going to see in winner's circle here sooner or later at Syracuse.
I completely agree, Paul. Thanks for joining Paul Page, Brock Yates, and myself, Steve Evans, here in Syracuse.
The executive producer for American Sports Cavalcade is Harvey M. Palish. Produced and directed by John B. Mullen. A promotional consideration provided for and a fee paid by this. The American Sports Cavalcade is a presentation of Diamond P Sports. Diamond P Sports presents the American Sports Cavalcade. A panorama of speed, color, drama, and excitement. The American Sports Cavalcade.
Back around the turn of the century, one of the nation's most complete state fairgrounds was built in Syracuse, New York. In many ways, it was ahead of its time. And for almost a century old, the old girl still looks pretty good. Especially interesting is the architecture. From places like the Hudson River Valley and all over the Northeast, they came to the fairgrounds by train. Their favorite attraction, the 1 mile dirt oval. Hello everyone, I'm Steve Evans. And you know that dirt oval was originally built for horse racing and automobile racing as a novelty. But soon the cars started drawing more people than the horses, and everybody came by train. The fans, drivers like Barney Oldfield, Eddie Rickenbacker, even the cars were on steel wheels. Boy, what fun they must have had. Well, today the race cars come by custom-built transporters and the fans in the family car. But the fun, that hasn't changed one bit, especially when the dirt modifieds are in town. To tell us about today's show, here's Brock Yates.
Well, Steve, Rickenbacker and Oldfield are not here, but I think somebody said they saw Elvis wandering around. But seriously, everybody who likes automobile racing in the Northeast looks like they're jammed into these grandstands. A great crowd today. Going to see two great races. The 358 modifieds, the small blocks, are going to run in a 50-lap championship event. And later in the afternoon, you're going to see the big blocks. The big race cars that are so popular in this part of the country, with the great stars like Brett Hearn, a great driver who won this event last year, and the ever-popular barefoot Bob McCready, along with all the other stars of the big block wars, running in a 95-lap championship. It's going to be a great show. But right now, the 358 small blocks are lining up, and they're just about ready to go. Steve?
The grid is formed, Brock, for the National Auto Supply 358 modified race, an annual affair here at the New York State Fairgrounds that fills the racetrack to capacity. And on the pole is Matt Quinn. Matt is from East Greenbush, New York, calls Lebanon Valley Speedway home. Just a few minutes ago, I had a chance to talk to not only Matt Quinn, but other drivers we expect to be serious. Well, Brett, you're on the front row, but on the wrong side of it.
Yeah, it is. I think we lost by about 5 100ths, and it's real important to be on the inside today. I think I'd almost rather be third than second because the groove is kind of narrow and you can really get hung out on the outside lane.
Well, Matt can expect a real drag race to turn 1 then.
I think that's a good part of the race right there. I think whoever wins the race to turn 1 will determine who's going to lead a good part of this race.
And you may have thought it was a stock car race from all of the pace cars that were out on the surface, but that's because those pace cars represent all of the individual tracks who are part of dirt. And these drivers represent those tracks. There's a lot of pride. The fans come from all of the surrounding areas. They bring their pace car with them, darn it.
Sure do. Dirt being, of course, drivers' independent racetracks, the hot sanctioning body in the Northeast for these kind of automobiles. Okay, we got a bunch of great-looking race cars getting ready on this big, wide front main straightaway here at Syracuse, the racetrack they call the Moody Mile. And I would imagine, though, the weather's really nice, Steve, abnormally nice for us sometimes coming up in these parts of the country. Warm, beautiful sunny day. Racetrack looks like in very, very good shape.
The biggest problem with this racetrack traditionally is turn number 3. They get holes down there that could swallow literally a Sherman tank. Stay with us. We'll be back with the start of the 358 Modifieds.
Okay, there's your parade of pace cars leading this 33-car field out of turn number 4 here at Syracuse. They'll be ready for the start of the 358 Modified National Auto Supply Race, a championship event for these cars. 50 hard laps, no stops, unremitting competition. Going to be interesting because, Steve, we've got a bunch of veterans from the big blocks. You just saw Kenny Brightbill and Alan Johnson, 2 of the real veterans and excellent runners in that kind of competition. Spread throughout this field are not only guys like Danny Johnson, who run the big blocks, that's Alan's brother, who run very well here in the past, but guys that run the 358s, they're specialists in the smaller block, smaller displacement type automobiles. They're basically the same chassis as the big block cars, but less horsepower, less weight, and a little bit more nimble on a big mile track like this.
And without that big block horsepower, these cars can be, well, as difficult to drive in their own way. It takes a bit of finesse to get one around. Now, up in the front row, of course, is Brett Hearn. We know he's got that finesse. He won this event 1 year ago, the 358 Modified, in a great finish over Bob McCready.
Well, there's back in row 15, Jeff Hetzler, one of the good runners, and Billy Pouch, a very, very good runner. We see him run not only in the modifieds, the big block cars, the small block modifieds, we see him occasionally show up in an outlaw sprint car.
And generally in all of our sprint car coverage, we try to explain what stagger means in the setup of these race cars. It's equally as important on the modified cars. Earlier I had a look using Matt Quinn's pole sitting number 44 car.
Science marches on here. Unbelievable kind of little tricks of technology that each kind of automobile racing brings to the party, Steve.
Now let's remember, Brett Hearn said, "I'd rather be third than second." That's how he values the inside line. We talked about a drag race between he and 44 Matt Quinn, who is on the inside, on the right-hand side of your screen right now. Let's see what materializes there. Hearn will be looking to get a brilliant start.
Racetrack nice and smooth at this point. This part of the racetrack can get full of potholes as they come off turn number 4. We've got a green flag.
And Matt Quinn was ready for the likes of Brett Hearn. It is going to be Quinn, the 44 car, first into turn number 1. But look at Hearn right there, the red and white car, about a car length back.
Kenny Tremont in the 89 right behind him as they sweep off turn number 2 and down the very narrow back straightaway. This really is 2 different kinds of racetracks, Steve. Big wide front straight and a very narrow back straight with 2 connecting tight corners at either end.
Brett Hearn coming up to challenge Matt Quinn for the lead, trying to get it before the end of the first lap, but it's not to be. The best place to pass here at Syracuse is turn number 1. The worst place to pass here at Syracuse is turn number 3.
That's right. You get on the brakes and try to get underneath people as they you go into turn number 1. But as the field sweeps through turn 3 that you see right there, the racetrack narrows up radically, and we've seen some big crashes here.
Well, using up all of the racetrack back in the 7th position, it's 30 Alan Johnson, 44 J.R. Kenny Brightville, Marty Nolan, that M6 car. They're using all the real estate they can find there to try to decide who's going to have that 7th position.
But right now, it's Brett Hearn still trying to get around Matt Quinn in that 44 automobile. Matt Quinn got about a 2-car length lead on the veteran Brett Hearn.
Up, the yellow flag is out, and it's for that reason. Greg Ormsby, the 0 car, started 16th, is up against the wall, may have bent up that right front, even the left front wheel just a bit. So he was probably out of this thing as the field reforms for a restart. Hey, the action has just begun. Stay with us from the Super Dirt Spectacular, the New York State Fairgrounds in Syracuse. We'll be right back.
We're still under caution here on the big mile at Syracuse as they clean up the wreckage after Craig Ormsby did a little wall testing over there in turn number 3. And here comes Fritz Eppright into the pits for a tire change. Apparently, looks like he cut one down. And Steve, in this kind of competition, that is disaster. No chance for any kind of sojourns into the pits in a 50-lap race like this.
No, absolutely not. As we talked earlier, the tires are so important to the overall handling of the automobile. Even if they've got all the air in them, if one is just a little off on size, less than a half an inch, it could destroy the handling of the race car, make it too loose or too tight, depending on the condition. But no, you're right. If you pit in this one, the other drivers are going to protest the scoring. I guarantee you that. Now, this is a no-stop wonder here.
We got a green, and let's see if Brett Hearn can put it on. Yes, he does. Got Matt Quinn on the green coming off turn number 4, and Brett Hearn snookered Quinn a little bit on that start. They made a great launch off turn 4 and takes the lead.
Well, Brock, what an improvement in the weather for us, the race cars and the drivers. Over a year ago here, we froze to death. You couldn't wear enough clothes. And today, as you can see by the sky, it's just a beautiful, very special day for racing. Good for engines, good for announcers, good for drivers.
And the racetrack's holding up pretty well. As you said earlier, this old track's been around since around World War I. And over the years, it's caused some real problems. Although, when it's right, it's perfect. Remember, we saw a number of years ago Sammy Swindell come in here with an Outlaw Sprinter and average almost 145 miles an hour around here. And on a racetrack, a dirt track that's flat, no banks, that is really an awesome amount of speed. And these cars won't go anywhere near that quickly, but they will put on a great show for you.
As we look back to Jeff Hetzler, the 15 car, who is running 15th, he's usually a bit better of a performer here than that, but right now dicing back and forth with 25 Howie Finch and 35S.
Well, these guys come here from, as you say, from racetracks all over the Northeast. There's an awful lot of money up for the small block cars as well as the big blocks that we'll see later. But this kind of a show is has its massive fans that come here. They bring their motorhomes. They pack every hotel all over upstate New York and pack these grandstands to watch their favorites run on the only big mile racetrack that, trouble here in turn number 3.
And spinning is number 24, Rick Wilson. Didn't do a lot of damage to the car. It looked like he kind of got tangled up with 57 Fritz Eppright, who we saw changing tires earlier. Eppright had lost that time in the pits and was trying to make up for it in spades and kind of shut the door on Rick Wilson.
But Bob Lineman in the USA 1, he was in behind Rick Wilson, got offline there and spun, did a 180 and is parked out there in turn number 3. So we've got a caution. They'll clear the racetrack. And in the meantime, earlier, Steve had a look at some of the services that go on in the infield at a race like this. I think everybody's got one of those things, Steve. As they form up 2 by 2, that's Brett Hearn in the 6. He's leading it. Right beside him, Matt Quinn, who we remember snookered him on the last restart. Let's see how Quinn could do. We got a green as they go down into turn number 3, and I think that Hearn is going to hold on to the lead.
Yep, it sure looks like it. Brett Hearn, another great start. Nat Quinn tried to stay with him, but really can't. In fact, 89 Kenny Tremont is coming up to challenge 44 Matt Quinn. Quinn's going to have a hard time hanging on to that second position.
That's right. Well, of course, Tremont, a real veteran in this kind of competition. And so Matt's got his hands full now with Kenny Tremont. As you see, Tremont right in behind him as they go down that back straightaway and head into turn number 3. Tremont may try to set him up down low. Not so. Tremont backs off a little bit. You got to be real cautious down in here, Steve.
Oh, you sure do, Brock. But back in the pack there, Jeff Hetzler, not making much progress, is still running 15th, and in fact is slowing way down. It looks like his day just might be over.
Yeah, it sure does. He's way off the pace as he bounces through those bumps that are getting worse and worse in turn 4.
And they're not as bad as we've seen them, though, not even close, because the small block cars don't tear them up as much as the big block cars. When we see the big block cars later on today, they'll be running a fairly short race for them, so maybe it'll hold up.
Oh, yeah. As Hetzler is into the pits, he speeds up, charges down that big wide pit lane into toward his pits, locks up the front wheels as he comes to a halt. Crew's going to try to figure out what's going on with him. As you said earlier, Hetzler is one of the finest runners in this kind of competition. They're working around with a rear suspension. Apparently, maybe one of the links is loose. Jeff is certainly trying to tell him what's going on. I'm sure all he can tell him is, hey, I got a problem in the rear end.
That's right, and here's a guy that's got a problem. 44 Nat Quinn, who started on the pole. His problem is 89 Kenny Tremont, who's trying to take that second place away from him. Look at him pitch these things sideways in 3.
No wings on these things, very little ground effect, just those tunnels on the side to give them a little stability. But for the most part, it's strictly the driver in a relatively simple race car and a very dangerous big racetrack that offers a challenge here as Matt Quinn continues to hold on to that second spot, but Tremont continues also to challenge.
Well, it appears that Quinn has the handling where it really counts in the corners, and that Tremont has the horsepower down the straightaways. And the straightaways are good and long here. You can sacrifice a little handling if you had the power.
Yeah, but these corners, too, are not only flat, but they're tight, and they're also bumpy. So you've got to have a race car that works in these corners here, or else all the power and speed on the straightaways isn't going to help.
All right, and here's that battle for the 4th position. 14J Mike Ricci and 30 Alan Johnson. Alan Johnson, who has mastered this Moody Mile so many times, is fighting for 4th spot.
So here they come down the back straightaway and get ready to tuck into that very tight turn number 3, which is getting more and more bumps. Look at those big potholes. You catch one of those things wrong and it can hook you right into the fence or spin you out. Or, for that matter, can do a lot of damage to the suspension. And, in fact, that may be what happened to Jeff Hetzler's rear end. Steve is with him now that the man is out of the race.
I tell you, for a man in a strange race car, you were making tremendous progress.
Yeah, the race car was going pretty good. On the restart, we just got a little jammed up there. One of the guys bounced off the inside guardrail and stopped, and I had to be the next one in line, so I touched him a little bit. Bent the right front radius rod, now it's all over the track.
Now you got to fix the car you borrowed.
No, it's not too much damage. I imagine we can fix it in about 10 minutes, but
sorry to see you out. You were a lot of fun to watch.
Well, thank you. Hopefully we'll be back.
Well, 10 seconds, much less 10 minutes in the pits in a 50-lapper like this puts you out of this kind of competition, Steve.
That's right, and you're not running for points in a series. This is really the end of a series of qualifying events, so there's no reason, especially when you borrowed that map, to go out and put any more hard miles on it than he already had.
Good race for 4th there. That's the 14J of Mike Ricci and Alan Johnson in the 30 really going at it as they come off turn number 4 and down the long front straightaway.
I'll tell you what, when you get into that turn number 3, you better be ready for anything to happen, depending on where that driving left rear wheel hits in one of those ruts. Because as you said, boy, it can hook you any direction it feels like.
That's right. There's Johnson and Ricci. Oh, we got a caution.
The caution is out because number 27, Steve Botcher, is in the wall down in turn number 4. Not too hard. Sure, he's okay, but it's enough to bring the caution out until the wreckers can remove the machine. Stay with us from the New York State Fairgrounds and the National Auto Supply Super Dirt Spectacular. We're having lots of fun with the 358 modified. Well, I don't know about Steve Botcher, but we are.
Well, we're under caution here at Syracuse as that number 27 automobile of Steve Botcher is on the hook. Remember, Steve punched it into the wall in turn number 4, which brought out the caution. Brett Hearn continues to lead it, but we'll have a look at how that developed. There is Botcher in the 27th. He was running 16th behind 35 and number 5, Bob Savoy. It looks as if he got into the corner a little hot and then all of a sudden ran up onto the number 5 and wham, into the fence. Fortunately, Steve unhurt. Obviously feelings hurt, a little embarrassed naturally, but uninjured. But as you can see, the right side of that race car took a wild thump. A lot of work to be done on that. They may want to get over to Murphy's Racetrack Supply here before this is over. In the meantime, though, Steve is with Steve Botcher.
Yeah, the 27 car been up tremendously. Steve, we're sorry to see you out of it. You told us earlier you set the car up loose intentionally. Would that have been a contributing factor at all?
No, I got messed up with another car, and he took our right front out, and this is what happened.
In the wrong place at the wrong time?
Yeah, running in the back. You know, that's where you get in trouble.
Part of this game, unfortunately.
Boy, isn't that the truth? Running in the back is where you get in trouble. Words to live by in automobile racing. But right now, Brett Hearn in the red 6 on the point as he will bring them down for a restart on the outside. Matt Quinn, Kenny Trevant, Mike Ritchie, and Alan Johnson. Johnson perhaps ready to make his move here, Steve.
Well, his brother Danny is making one as well. Danny has moved from the 13th starting position to number 6. In fact, just behind his brother Alan. The two do like to go at it. The sibling rivalry alive into their adult years.
Yeah, absolutely. They race against each other almost every weekend, up and down all across New York State and the Northeast, as we get ourselves a green. And one more time, Brett Hearn stands on the gas and comes off in the lead.
And one more time, 44 Matt Quinn and 89 Kenny Tremont battle for the 2nd position. But you know, Brett is really not dominant. You couldn't use that word yet on him.
Well, he does seem to be have all kinds of power on the restarts, though, and has pulled out a little bit of a lead now as we watch Quinn and Tremont go at it for 2nd and 3rd place. It looks as if this interval is pretty constant, Steve. There's a good battle, though, for 4th between Ritchie and Johnson, and they've been going at it for lap after lap. Ritchie in that red and white number 14J right behind. That normally is the Johnson colors, and the number 30 of Alan Johnson. So those two guys continue to go at it, but the race here really is for 2nd, as Tremont just can't quite get up behind Quinn to really challenge. He sits about 3 or 4 car lengths behind him and can't seem to get a whole lot closer. Going to have to rely, I think, on a little bit of a bobble on the part of Matt to make up that disadvantage that he's got right now.
Well, you can see how close and how tough these guys are racing each other. It's not just another Saturday night affair. For many of the drivers, it would be the biggest payday they've ever enjoyed in this kind of automobile racing. And it's the end, as I said, of a long series of qualifiers and adding up points and trying to figure where you are in the standings and trying to make the cut if you're not in. So there's a lot of pressure off and a lot of pressure on.
Well, there's a lot of honor, too, Steve. In this kind of competition, this is the biggest racetrack they run. It's the biggest event they run every year. And to come down here and to win any kind of a race, or for that matter, to be able to run competitively with a man like Brett Hearn or Alan Johnson or Kenny Brightbill or one of these top runners is really a feather in your cap. And you can go back home to your little quarter-mile or half-mile racetrack and say, hey, I raced with the big boys and did well.
That's right, and your sponsors love it. In fact, the fans over the years, the one thing they'll remember about this season is who won at Syracuse.
That's right.
Just like Indianapolis.
Yeah, it is. It's the Indianapolis or Daytona 500 of this kind of modified racing, and people come and really, really enjoy this weekend of competition.
And our leader, Brett Hearn, if you want to compare him to some other drivers, probably Rusty Wallace in NASCAR, maybe Danny Sullivan in IndyCar racing. Very sharp, very well-groomed, good with the sponsors, good with the press, tries to be good with the fans. He's just a class act.
He is. And that crew, that race car out of New Jersey is perfectly set up. They come in here every year loaded for bear. He wins a lot of races, of course, on a weekly schedule. And Hearn, in some cases, in some parts of the country, is not as popular as you might expect, simply because he does win a lot. And oftentimes, you know, local stock car fans get a little bit down on a man who wins consistently. And that, of course, is something that consistent winners have to live with. And they're prepared to, as long as your banker likes you, they don't really care a whole lot otherwise.
Well, it's the Darrell Waltrip syndrome. He's a little outspoken. We like it, but sometimes fans don't.
That's right. But right now, the guys that are trying to move in on him, that's the 29 of Mike Perrott, the 10B of Donnie Wetmore. That's a battle for 7th position. And not a whole lot going on right now. Everybody's kind of stabilized at this particular stage of the race and trying to hang on, move up a little bit, but also be very, very cautious as this racetrack starts to disintegrate in the corners.
You know, you might ask yourself, why don't they just drive around those bumps down in turn number 3? Well, this is not the Baja. You drive around those bumps, you're up in the loose stuff, you see, and that'll put you right up against the wall. You're going to spin your tires, lose lots of time on the racetrack. You've just got to tough it out and hope your race car holds up.
That's right. You set these race cars up as you get into the corner into a power slide, and you don't want to vary. You don't change the line once you get committed here.
No, absolutely not. You may try to straddle a few of them. We saw Brett Hearn do that fairly successfully the last lap around, but basically just tough it out.
All right, here's that famed brother act, the Johnson brothers going at it. Number 30, that's Alan, that younger brother in the 28J, Danny Johnson. And Alan just put a good move on the youngster here as they got off turn number 2, Steve.
I think the Johnson brothers, who are acknowledged big block drivers that class we'll be seeing later on, are having a real good time with these 358 cars. As you say, they're a little lighter, a little more nimble, and quite the power, but they'll go where you point them.
They will, Steve, and as you know, these dirt rolls are pretty rigid as far as the body work is concerned. In fact, they're very complicated. They don't give you a lot of latitude. The engines with 4-barrel carburetors, pretty reliable, pretty stable race car setup. So they're not that expensive to campaign. Hence, you see an awful lot of them on racetracks, and they put up a really good show. They're difficult to drive, and yet they got a lot of suspension adjustments. They're a lot like a sprint car underneath all that kind of body work. Really a single-seater without a wing on them. Is the chassis setup's very similar to an Outlaw Sprinter.
And why do they call them modifieds? Obviously, they're modified. Why don't they call them Formula Scary or Formula Weird or Formula Dirt? The modified term goes back to right after the war when they were modifying street cars for this kind of competition. Chopped and channeled 40 Fords and Model A coupe bodies on 32 rails with flathead engines. The mid-50s, along came the Chevrolet V8, gave them a lot more power, and the cars started to become more sophisticated with tube chassis and all kinds of goodies.
Yeah, and these cars are a strange permutation of those rules because you can see they don't have any front fenders. They got a full body work on the back. And believe it or not, part of the roof components are actually theoretically relatable to production bodies. I don't know why they even bother, because the cars are so specialized that they don't really bear any relationship to a stock car. They're really a pure race car.
That's right. If you're trying to find your Chevrolet Lumina out there, forget it.
Well, the prime chassis builder in this kind of competition is Maynard Troyer, who is an old NASCAR regular up in Rochester, New York. He builds a ton of them. Olson built some. A number of them are built down in Pennsylvania. They're kind of kit cars, and you can put them all, bolt them all together. As I said, they'll take some big hits and keep on ticking. I'm sure Steve Botcher wouldn't agree right now. His car is pretty badly bashed up, but they are tough race cars. And of course, designed primarily for competition on half and third mile dirt tracks. This is the biggest speedway or biggest racetrack they run on, and they're basically short track, dirt track modifieds.
Well, then basically the mile dirt tracks that are left in this country are at fairgrounds, just like this one is. You know, intervaling back to Chris Tuthill, 29 Mike Perrott, and 10B Donnie Wetmore for that 7th position. There's some good racing action back there. But so far, this has been, except for the first few laps, all a Brett Hearn show. Hearn is still running up front. His Freightliner-sponsored automobile is all in the freight today.
It sure is. Brett broke free from the pack early in the going and has really had himself a nice open racetrack. He has yet to poke his way into a whole lot of traffic. There's Hearn in that beautiful red and white number 6 automobile out of New Jersey, and that's an Olson chassis that has served Brett so well over the years. Bud Olson only builds a few a year, and Hearn, I think, gets the pick of the litter.
Well, so much for his open racetrack. He's got lap traffic dead ahead of him, and that may slow Brett Hearn just a bit. Nothing else has, that's for sure. You know, in fact, until a few seasons ago, and look at this, watch Hearn handle the traffic. He's going to do it on the front straightaway and into turn 1, the safest place to do it. You got more room there and a smoother racetrack than anywhere else. hangs the rear end out just a little bit, having a little fun with the race car there in one. Whoop, the yellow flag is out. Why is that so? There it is, number 57, Fritz Eppright. Fritz got a lot of smoke coming out of that car. Obviously some fatal engine problems, and I think D.I.R.T would like to have a look at the dirt and make sure there's no dangerous oil down.
Right. So that car will now apparently come to a stop over there in between turns 3 and 4. That'll definitely bring out the tow car and slow the field down for yet another restart. So Fritz Eppright finished for the day. Tough break for the young man, but nonetheless, Brett Hearn will continue to dominate here at Syracuse. We're back at Syracuse for the National Auto Supply Super Dirt Spectacular for the 358 Modified. We're under caution as Brett Hearn leads it. There you see the Dirt official signaling one more lap to green. So we've got time to go down to the pits with Steve and Brett Hearn's crew chief, Charlie DeAngelis.
Charlie, Brett on the radio says something about oil pressure. Problem?
Well, it's oil temperature. It's a little hotter than we like, but it's still not a problem. So we're just sort of backpedaling a little bit now and see what happens.
When oil gets hotter, it gets thinner. It affects the pressure as well.
Right. We're a little concerned about it, but it's not a big problem right now.
Would you like to see all green laps, or will some yellow help cool it off a little bit?
We'd like to see the caution as much as we can right now.
I had a feeling. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Now that, of course, slows down the revs, cools down the engine, gives everybody, gives everything, all those reciprocating bits in there, a little chance to cool down, Steve.
Absolutely, and I'd like to thank Charlie DeAngelis and all of the crew chiefs here this weekend in Syracuse, because they like to be up on top of those trailers, spotting a lot of them, and they come down to talk to us, because I've got acrophobia and I'm going up there. So I want to thank them all for the cooperation.
Okay, there's the green, and there's that number 6 launched off turn number 4 one more time. Looked like a little puff of smoke, Steve, as Hearn got on the throttle, but diesel cleared itself out now, and one more time he is off to the races, as it were, and moves out to a big lead on Matt Quinn, who continues to hold on to second place, but also now being challenged once again by 89 Kenny Tremont.
And I don't think for Brett Hearn fans that little puff of smoke at the restart was anything to worry about. Unlike sprint cars that run fuel injection and alcohol, these are carbureted on gasoline. And on those caution laps, they get just a little bit loaded up. And when you really snap that throttle open, it's got to burn that excess fuel out somewhere.
Yeah, so Brett Hearn is just on a tear here. He is really moving away from both Quinn and Tremont at a pretty prodigious rate. And Tremont, as we said earlier, just kind of hangs on to the Nerf bar of Matt Quinn, but can't make up more than about, he sits about 3 or 4 car lengths back on the straights, get in maybe to 2 or 3 car lengths in the corners, but can't seem to challenge Matt Quinn.
Well, if Brett Hearn can hang on here to win, there's only a little over 2 laps to go. This would be his 2nd consecutive National Auto Supply victory here in Syracuse.
Well, he's a big winner almost everywhere he goes around the Northeast with this car. And, of course, he's got a couple of cars in his stable. He's got a big block modified, identical paint livery as to this car, but somewhat different cars in terms of chassis setup and, obviously, engine size.
And a lot of people have said, boy, that Brett Hearn is talented. Why doesn't he go IndyCar racing or NASCAR racing? He's done a little Busch Grand National racing, but understand, Brett Hearn makes a handsome living doing this right here.
He sure does. And there you see it, 2 laps remaining. The upright flags indicating 2 more miles to victory for Brett Hearn in that red and white number 6 automobile. That is the 2nd place car of Matt Quinn. Right behind him, Kenny Tremont, who has fallen back a little bit, apparently. Tremont, I don't know, just can't seem to challenge. Of course, tires could be coming a factor now. We've had 50 hard miles of racing here on a very abrasive, very, very almost asphalt-like surface, Steve.
That's right. I'm not sure you couldn't almost run slick tires on this surface here today. Charlie DeAngelis is hauling over the radio, I'm sure, as the last lap flag comes out. Brett, easy, baby. What's the oil temperature? Let's not do anything stupid. And I'm Brett Hearn, as cool as he is probably laughing and say, Charlie, don't worry about a thing, buddy.
That's right. Down the back straightaway for the final time here, as you see Brett Hearn right behind him in the picture, but not in the picture competitively, is Matt Quinn. He sweeps a little bit wide on this final lap to get around all the bumpy stuff in turn number 3, off turn 4, heading for the checkered flag, and Brett Hearn will win it.
Brett Hearn in his Freightliner special wins for the 2nd year in a row. That's hard to do, to repeat at Syracuse, considering how competitive it is, but he's done it 2 years in a row. Brett Hearn has won this 50-lapper. Well, checking the statistics, Brock Yates, I find not only has he won it 2 years in a row, this is his 3rd win overall, over the years, I should say, in the National Auto Supply race. Brad Hearn out of Sussex, New Jersey, in the Freightliner-sponsored Olsen-built car. Just dominant today. A year ago today, he fought tooth and nail to the wire. This was a much easier victory for Brad Hearn, and a broader smile.
Well, he expressed some concern at the start whether or not he'd get snookered on the outside of the front row, but that ceased to be a problem after about 100 yards into the race, and Brad Hearn went on to probably one of the easiest victories of his career.
Well, when you've got that much talent in that kind of race car, it's easy to make them look easy. Stay with us. We'll talk to Brett, and we'll have the big blocks.
Well, we've seen victory here for Brett Hearn in the 50-lap 358 modified event. Matt Quinn held on for 2nd. Kenny Trebon challenged for 3rd, couldn't make it work. 4th, Danny Johnson. 5, Mike Ritchie. But for the 2nd year in a row, the man of the hour is Brett Hearn.
2 years in a row, can you believe it?
No, I can't. I'll tell you, the car just ran great. We had a little problem with oil temperature, but taking that gear out and running a higher gear, really, that motor just pulled all the way down the straightaway and made the difference.
Were you able to pace the engine at all the last lap? They were awful close to you.
Well, I had to back down when I could, because if I didn't, I think I would have had a real problem with that oil temperature. It was right around 340, 360, and I didn't want to have a problem.
I tell you, Charlie and your crew had their fingers crossed.
I bet they did. We were back and forth on the radio, and I know they were concerned.
Now you got the Winter Classic coming up. A double?
I hope so.
So do all his fans.
So Brad Hearn will go right back, climb into another race car, and get ready for yet another race here at Syracuse. But let's take a look at the other finishers in the top 10. Chris Tuttle, Mike Perrott, Kyle Rock, Donnie Wetmore, and 10th place goes to Steve Dragoon. We've got more racing coming up, but first, let's go to Matt Quinn, who took 2nd.
Well, Matt, pole and all, Mr. Hearn was just a little too tough to tame.
Mr. Hearn's good company to keep. We have different motors. He got what's called a 358, which has much more low end compared to what I have, a little smaller, but it's a little different rules. Where he has more powers coming out of the turns, that's where he's got me.
Why didn't you go to the same motor he's got?
Just don't have one yet.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Well, let's not feel too sorry for Matt Quinn, Steve. He did take the pole in this race, so he had some kind of advantage over Brett Hearn, at least during qualifying.
I bet next year he shows up with a big 358. You know, earlier today, the drivers drew lots for their positions on the grid for the race to come, the A-Plus Mini Market Winner's Circle Classic featuring the big block modifieds. Now, it was not totally a random drawing, but according to a driver's number of wins over the course of the season. Anyway, once they went through all of those festivities, everyone knew where to line up when it came time. Well, it is time. Stay with us. We'll be back with the A-Plus Mini Market Winner's Circle Classic right after these words.
All right, the field is lined up on pit road there in the shadow of this giant grandstand, packed full of racing fans here at the New York State Fairgrounds in Syracuse, New York. The field getting ready to go out. Now, these are the big block modifieds, the big motors, as opposed to the smaller engine cars that we just saw run. And once again, though, we got the heavies in the field, Steve Evans, Brett Hearn, and Bob McCready up front. That's a pair to draw to.
Oh, it is a pair to draw to. And just before they crawled into these cars on pit road, I had a chance to talk to some of the guys I think could win it. Well, defending Winter Classic champion Bob McCready, last year you won it with a big small block. What have you got this year for us?
Well, we got a big block Pontiac.
Big block.
Big block. Last year we didn't have enough, really. I mean, some of the guys had problems, and it was just our day for that race.
What do you think now after we've seen the 358 class? Did that help the track or hurt it?
Track's really tough. It's going to be extremely difficult to pass. You're really going to have to, somebody's going to have to make a mistake because you just aren't going to go around them.
All right, you get out of a small block car and you get into a big block car. What do you change mentally?
Not too much. It's pretty much all, the same track. You're dodging the same holes out there. A lot more power. Just trying to keep control of it.
Well, Doug, I'm sure you wanted to draw inside if you could have, but instead you're outside.
Well, we've been pretty lousy at drawing this year, so I kind of had a feeling I was going to be getting a number 4 spot.
That's the only thing you've been lousy at, though. You've had a terrific season.
Yeah, we've been running real strong all season, and I hope it continues here this week.
Where would you pass if you possibly could?
Well, I'd like to just do all my passing on the straightaways, but I don't think it's going to work that way. I think we're going to have to be right on them in the turn to do anything on the straightaway. So we're going to have to use the turns.
Okay, I hope we talk again after 25 laps.
Thank you.
There you have it. 25 laps, 25 hard miles of racing here with some of the best big block modified guys in the country. Up front, row one, Brett Hearn and Bob McCready. We just saw Hearn win, and he's back for more. Danny Johnson and Doug Hoffman. We know how good they are. Danny Johnson, one of the really good young ones, Steve.
And with just the front four, you could pack the grandstands here at Syracuse. Those are four of the most popular and talented names in all of dirt modified racing, and a lot of great competitors behind them too. Jeff Trombley, Billy Pouch, Billy Van Pelt, Ken Tremont. If you're from the Northeast at all, these are household words in a lot of homes.
Oh yeah, Mike Romano, they're all good runners. Mitch Gibbs and Mark Kenyon back in row 8. Row 9. Bob Kraus and Lou Blaney, one of the veterans. He is the father of Dave Blaney, the great World of Outlaws driver, also runs here on occasion. Jack Johnson, who won here a bunch of times, a real veteran and a fine driver. Joe Plazek, a good young driver from Canada. Robert Ranger rounds out this field. Now, big block modified stars from all over the Northeast. 23 cars, 25 laps.
And that is really, I mean, the ultimate sprint race, just 25 laps. There's no pit stops. The guys at the back that maybe just had an off qualifying run and now know they're as quick as anybody in the front 3 rows have got to be gearing up mentally to go for it immediately. You can't taste yourself here. A lot of dirt, a lot of dust.
And McCready in the lead off the outside of the front row. The starter, Gaston Selbus, gives him the green flag, and McCready has a big lead down into turn number 1. Brett Hearn, oh, no. Caution now. I don't see any cars off the racetrack,
I'll tell you what, Gaston Selbus didn't like that start a bit. McCready jumped on Brett Hearn before the green was ever waved. It was just still wrapped around the stick when we saw Gaston with the flag. What he's doing here is putting out the yellow. They're probably going to point a finger at McCready and say, we're going to restart this thing. Don't do that again.
Well, this almost a World of Outlaws kind of start where they take the green on the back straightaway. But definitely McCready was on the gas in the middle of turn number 3 and blew around the outside of the pole sitter Brett Hearn. Now, there's one of the dirt officials pointing at Bob McCready, and he's got a black flag in his hand. So this is serious.
What he's saying is, do that again, and I'll black flag you. And the crowd here at Syracuse, the supporters of Bob McCready, are, well, making their thoughts known with a bit of a chant. Fortunately, you cannot hear in the background.
Well, he comes from just up the road in Watertown, New York, which is only, what, about 40, 50 miles up Interstate 81. So Bob McCready, very popular here in Syracuse, New York. Okay, they're formed up 2 by 2 for a restart. We'll be back for the green here. 25 laps at Syracuse.
Well, with Bob McCready on the outside of the front row, properly chastised for jumping the earlier planned start, it looks like they're forming up for another green. Hopefully this one a little more organized. The official looking him over. He knows if he black flags McCready, the entire crowd will jump right on his back. McCready being a good boy, however. Instead of hitting the gas between turns 3 and 4, he's going to actually wait till he sees the green flag. We're going to have a real drag race down into turn number 1. And it's Brett Hearn who reacts first, but his car kind of bobbled a bit, Brock.
Well, let's see what happens here, because they come off the turn number 4 dead even. And McCready's got a little bit of an edge. In fact, that was a great start by Bob McCready, and he squeezes out Brett Hearn to take the lead. So that was a heads-up start, no problem there. Bob McCready just out-muscled and out-powered Brett Hearn into turn 1.
And 28J Danny Johnson, he tried to take over that second spot, but there just wasn't enough room between Brett Hearn and Bob McCready. The crowd roared their approval of that start. It was a beauty.
He liked that, as McCready just flees. He is flying away from Brett Hearn. Bob McCready's got a ton of power. He told you earlier that he had a little underpowered setup last year and won with a little bit of luck, but not today. Bob McCready is just charging. So off he comes, and there's Brett Hearn off turn number 2 down the back straightaway. Danny Johnson continues to hound him back there in 3rd place, but the field cleared the way pretty well. They got through that opening lap without any incidents. There's Jack Johnson and famed orange number 12. His car colors for years. One of the real veterans in this sport, and an excellent driver. He's won the big race here a couple of times, and Jack Johnson has his work cut out for him right now. He started in 20th spot, worked his way right now up to 17th, but that's a long way between him and the flying Bob McCready up in the lead.
Well, with only 25 laps, you can bet that guys like Jack Johnson and more particularly the Brad Burns of the world know you just can't let McCready build up too much of a lead here too quickly, or you're never going to catch him. You need a couple of caution flags to make that possible, and you may not get them.
That's right. A guy like Jack Johnson needs 2, maybe 3 caution flags to tuck this field up and get himself a couple of really good restarts to get up near the leaders. But if you let good guys like McCready and Hearn run in a clear, open racetrack, I don't care how fast you are, in 25 laps, you just can't catch them.
But I'll tell you what, Jack Johnson in that orange car 12 is certainly trying. Look at him come up and tell Billy Decker, hey, buddy, I'm back here. I'm 16th, and I want to be 15th. I think all he did was accelerate Decker, though.
Well, I think you observed earlier when we were talking about this race, these guys are all good. There's no bozos in this field at all. They've come here based on track performance up and down the dirt circuit, and they earned their way into this field. You just come in here and pay your money and say, I want to be in this field.
Ooh, and we have got a serious smoker here now. This is our first real casualty of the event. Number 97, Mike Romano, has apparently wounded his big block motor. Maybe he was tempted, Brock, to build a 26-lap motor for a 25-lap race and just didn't make it.
It would not be the first time that happened, as we watch Jack Johnson continue to probe his way through the increasing bumps in turn number 3. They're really jarring your teeth now. We've got some holes you could float a small boat in if we had any rain. This is getting to be a real rough racetrack. Turn 1's got a few potholes in it as well, but nothing like turn number 3. And you can get yourself in a heap of trouble if you set the car up wrong as you enter one of those little depressions.
Well, everybody behind the leader, Bob McCready, would like to see a yellow flag, but in that you've got this quality of field, that lessens your chance for that. You don't have a rookie that may make a dumb mistake. We do have a car, however, in the pits.
That is Eddie Marshall in the 72. His crew going to change up both rear tires, and it looks as if they're being pretty leisurely about it, Steve. As we said, 25 laps, you park it in the pits for a few moments even, and you're out of it. So they're not in a big rush. They're probably going to use this for a little track test and a little track time, get out there and give old Eddie a chance to run the race car in a little bit.
Well, here's a guy that's running the race car in just a little bit. He is running away from the field. Barefoot Bob McCready, as the fans have called him for years, in that number 9 car. Bearded Bob is really whooping him here in this 25-lap spectacular.
You see that race car get a tricycle as it goes through those bumps and between turns 3 and 4. Now you can, if you catch one of those wrong, you can roll one of these things right into the fence. But McCready, of course, having run here at Syracuse for a long time, is well aware of how this racetrack will misbehave in the course of an afternoon. So he's pretty much ready for it. But believe me, chassis setup is terribly important. If you don't have the shock setting proper when you get into those bumps, you will get the wall.
Now we interval back to number 7. That's Frank Causey in 28J. Danny Johnson for the 5th spot. The 17 car we'll see in there, Mark Kenyon, is a lap car, but that's the kind of lead right now that Bob McCready has got. And I'll tell you, this track is treacherous. You look over the history of this racetrack since the turn of the century, there are some photos that are absolutely gruesome. I mean, the car's flipping completely over the wall into the horse stables. There's been, quite frankly, some serious fatalities here.
Oh, there has, definitely. And of course, in the old days, they would run the championship dirt cars, the Indianapolis type cars. This was a stop on the old 3A, the AAA circuit that involved Indianapolis, and Syracuse was one of the stops. They would run a 100-mile national championship race on this circuit, and guys like Roger Ward and Tony Bettenhausen and the Unser brothers and Mario Andretti and A.J. Foyt, they all ran on the Syracuse Mile when it was part of the 3A and the USAC circuit.
And of course, this facility mainly is here is the home of the New York State Fair every August here in Northern New York. Oh, boy, I'll tell you, they are really punching and running here in the pack. Other than McCready, everybody may come out of this swapped a little paint.
I don't want to reveal my age, but I saw Billy Vukovich run on this Syracuse mile, believe it or not.
Billy Vukovich the second.
No, Billy Vukovich the first. However, I did not see Barney Oldfield run here.
You were out of town. All right, we're having a good time, and so is the man up front, Bob McCready, just roaring away from him here.
Although I wouldn't think that Brett Hearn is smiling too broadly, because he's got to be frustrated. Bob McCready just blew away from him after the green fell, and he has not been able to make up any distance on him at all. And here comes Jack Johnson into the pit.
That's right, the orange number 12 car that was really, oh, and he's going to his trailer. He's not going to find the crew along the pit wall. He is completely out of this thing. Scratch the orange car.
Bob McCready, barefoot Bob. I don't know why they call him. He certainly doesn't drive barefoot, and I don't think he looks like a pretty sophisticated guy. I wouldn't imagine he spends a whole lot of time without shoes, but he sure does know how to shoe a race car. And he comes off turn number 4 and whistles down this front straightaway in front of this packed grandstand full of Bob McCready fans. And right now they have to be happy, because he is absolutely unchallenged on this big mile.
But as we've seen so many times in so many different forms of motorsports, anything can happen, especially when you consider the minefield they run through over in turn number 3. That could break anybody's race car at any time.
Well, we're back at Syracuse, New York, and in case you've been out cutting the grass for the last 8 or 10 minutes, Bob McCready continues to lead it here in this 25-lap feature for big block dirt modifieds, and he has been virtually unchallenged, Steve Evans, right from the drop of the green flag.
He has made no mistakes. He had a brilliant start. We had one start that was too good, and a almost black flag. The second time around, he did it legitimately, heads up, and blew Brett Hearn's doors off down into turn number 1. He is not afraid of the bumps in 3. He doesn't try to drive around him and get offline, even though he's got a big lead. He just goes right through him like Iron Man Stewart might. All in all, McCready, impressive is not even the word.
Well, here's your race for 9th place. That's the number 1 car, Pat O'Brien. Right behind him, the Canadian Joe Plazek, and yet another 1 car. That's he carries 1P. You come in here normally, and this classic American short track racing, usually in a given field, you have about 3 number 1 cars, 9 number 7 cars, and so they just stick an initial after each one of them or whatever, and everybody goes racing.
Well, that's because they represent their home track or home area. Each of it has its own numbering system. Nobody wants to give it up just for one race. That's your lucky number. Right. And 1P, Joe Blazak, his big block car is a 0. They're both hail out of the province of Ontario, and he does a little more traveling than some of these guys have to do.
Yep, he comes south to run this circuit, although these dirt-type modified cars are getting to be more and more popular. There's a little bit of a circuit building up for them down in Texas now, and they're starting to spread around the United States, mainly because they're very competitive. As I said earlier, they're pretty inexpensive to run and campaign. They require a lot of skill to drive. As you can see here in that black 28 car, Danny Johnson, who's chasing Frank Cozy through the bumps and mountains of turns 3 and 4 here. Johnson, those guys are racing for 5th place, and they've been going at it for quite a few laps. Cozy, though, holding Johnson off pretty well, but Danny's staying down low right against that inside rail and almost got a shot at Cozy coming off turn number 2. So Johnson suddenly begins to challenge now on the outside. Well, I'll tell you what, that back straightaway is only about 3 car widths wide, Steve, and he was really tucked up against the outside wall.
And you consider how far back Danny Johnson is and how hard he's driving. Well, you gotta admire it. This is one for the fans. That's where they're watching, right back there.
Absolutely. Probably about 140 miles an hour down the front straightaway and down the back as well. So you got to pay attention. These are fast race cars on a big, flat, very, very bumpy 1-mile racetrack, an old horse track. As Danny Johnson continues to challenge Frank Cozy for that position, but Frank apparently responded to that challenge, has moved out a little bit, about 5 car lengths. Remember, in the last lap, Johnson got almost side by side with him as they got into turn number 3.
And in fact, Frank Cozy whipped the pressure from Danny Johnson, is catching up just a little bit to the 7X car of Steve Payne, who's in the 4th position.
But watch Danny Johnson. He was thinking about a low side pass on Cozy as they got into turn 1. It didn't work, but I would be surprised if he didn't try that again. Johnson now on the high side, down the back straightaway. They're into traffic now, so let's see how Frank handles it. It's going to be Frank's move first, and you can be sure Danny Johnson's going to sit back there and watch which way Cozy goes through this other traffic.
All right, trying to set him up. Danny Johnson, and he makes the pass on Cozy. Danny Johnson has now moved into that 5th position.
Good move by Danny Johnson. Hard place to pass, too, coming off turn number 4. But he got underneath Frank and moves out. So there you can see it so often happens. As soon as he gets by his competitor, oftentimes a driver will just break free of him, because surely Cozy was just a little bit quicker in the corners, but Johnson clearly the faster car, and once he was clear of Frank, he's now moving away from him at a pretty prodigious rate.
Well, it's amazing to me that any of these cars have any shock absorber left on the left rear corner after all those ruts in turn number 3. It says an awful lot about the people that build that particular component. These are gas-charged coilover shocks, and I'll tell you, they'll be pretty beat up. They'll need a rebuilding when this is over, even at 25 laps.
Oh, boy, won't they? That is Danny Johnson in that black 28. Right behind him is Cozy, who, as we saw, gave up that position. But waiting back there, in fact, for any kind of a bobble on the part of Danny Johnson, and he tries to weave his way through some of the slower cars up ahead.
One of which has just pitted, so that'll remove that obstacle.
So Frank Cozy follows Danny Johnson down into turn number 1, and hanging on there. They both moved around some of the slower cars, but there is 10. That's the Lou Blaney automobile. Blaney, in fact, is starting to move now. He's going to start to challenge Frank Cozy for the 6th spot.
Lou Blaney, the father of Dave Blaney, so successful on the Outlaw Sprint Car Tour. Well, I'll tell you, he drives just like he did when he was a kid. Total abandon.
Absolutely. Lou Blaney, a fine race driver. Been around this business for a long time and really knows how to run short tracks in big modifieds like this, or in midgets or in sprint cars. He is a fine, fine race driver.
Well, the guys like Lou Blaney, dirt is dirt. And they'll drive anything that runs on dirt. They may shy away from an asphalt car. That's not what they do necessarily. But, boy, they'll drive anything on dirt.
Oh,
from
yeah.
go-karts to the Silver Crown Champ cars.
Love to slide them around. As this race slowly and steadily unwinds. We've been very fortunate. It's been a really clean race in terms of any big crashes. We've had a couple of small ones, but nothing like you might expect when these cars get running this hard on a big mile like this.
All right, there is our leader, Bob McCready, in the number 9 car. Seems to have all the vim and vigor he had at the very start, and nobody really making much progress at catching him. And coming down that front straightaway, Bob McCready, Watertown, New York, sees the white flag. He right now has less than 1 mile of racetrack to conquer to win this event here in Syracuse today.
So here he comes off turn number 2. Up ahead, that narrow, rather treacherous back straightaway. And then the 2 tight corners of 3 and 4, both filled with potholes. And in fact, a couple of slower race cars ahead of him as he weaves his way among the bumps. Off turn number 4 and down the front straightaway. The checkered flag lies ahead. Barefoot Bob McCready wins it.
Absolutely dominates it is what he did. And when you can put that kind of a hammerlock on guys like Brett Hearn, well, brother, you have had a good afternoon for yourself.
You sure have, as Bob McCready was absolutely unchallenged after one little bobbled start in the display of the black flag, and after that it was over because Bob McCready simply said goodbye.
You look at McCready and say, boy, that's a guy I'd like to have as the high school principal where my kid goes. And he's probably make a darn good one. An intelligent man, a great race car driver, and who showed him the way home today. Stay with us. We'll be back to talk with him.
Well, there's the man who blew him all the way today in this 25-lapper, Bob McCready, and Steve is with him.
For the 2nd year in a row, we greet Bob McCready, who has won the Winners Classic last year with a small black Chevy, this year with a big black Chevy. The fans adore him all over the Northeast, and he pays them his respects as well. Good job again.
Oh, thanks, Steve. Car was excellent, you know, and
I was getting a little antsy on the start and wanted to get going, and you want any edge you can get. I didn't realize when we went out they just watered the outside of the racetrack, so I mean I didn't want to get stuck out there, so I was just trying to get an edge, but we finally got a good start. And the car was great, and we run off and hit, and that's the way we like it.
I'll tell you what, at the start when they threatened you a little bit with that black flag, I thought your fans were going to tear the roof off the grandstand.
Well, they were right. I mean, I was definitely jumping a little bit. There's no question about it.
But the 9 car had the horsepower to win that drag race with Brett Hearn anyway.
Well, that's Ron Hutter. Ron Hutter builds just great engines. No bad ones, just great ones.
Again, terrific job.
Thank you.
Brock?
Well, Steve, Bob McCready, of course, is the man of the hour. Nobody was even near him, but we, of course, had some other guys and fine ones in this race as well. Brett Hearn, second place. Doug Hoffman finishes third. Steve Payne. Danny Johnson, good battle. Finally ends up in 5th place. Frank Cozy, you saw him run against him. Lou Blaney in 7th. Ken Tremont, Pat O'Brien, and Joe Plazek from Canada round out the top 10. And let's go to Steve again.
Well, Brett, they're not going to let you run the 25 laps over again, but if they would, what would you do differently? Anything?
I don't know. I think we just...
cheat.
Yeah, cheat, that would be it. But I think we had out-horsepowered a little bit. I felt we were real good in the corners. The car is driving as comfortably as it can on a rough track like this. He got away from us a little bit on the straightaway. We'd come back on him a little bit in the corners, but in the net result, he was just a little quicker than we were.
And both of you wanted to jump at the start.
We did, especially him. But I think... on that last start was a good one. He just ran right by me on the straightaway, and I tried to beat him down in the corner as hard as I could. But you know, he beat me in that race to the first turn, and that's all he needed to do.
Thanks for a good show.
Thank you.
No way anybody was going to touch Bob McCready today. Let's take a look at 11th through 20th. Billy Decker, Billy Van Pelt, Mark Kenyon, Jeff Trombley, Billy Pouch in 15th place. Unfamiliar for him. He usually runs up front. Jack Johnson as well. Eddie Marshall, Kevin Collins, Bob Kraus, and Mitch Gibbs in the 20th position. And now let's go to Steve with a 3rd place finisher. The dream of every race driver, a little bit faster. It was a great day here at Syracuse. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brock Yates for Steve Evans.
The executive producer for American Sports Cavalcade is RVM Palish. Produced and directed by John B. Mullen. Promotional consideration provided for and a fee paid by this special offer from Diamond P. The American Sports Cavalcade is a presentation of Diamond P Sports.